My name is Patrick Cannell. I'm chair of the committee, and as always, I'm joined by Diana Sweetie, who's our director of planning land use. Members of the committee, at the very least, will have seen Tammy's email thanking our co-chair, Fern Cunningham, for her many years of service, and announcing our new co-chair who will be joining us, Laura Starr, as of next month, I believe. So welcome to that position, Laura, and just wanted to make sure everyone is aware of that. Tonight we have obviously a much anticipated and jam-packed meeting. The first item, and let's get right to it, we have two items on the agenda. The first of which is the Health and Fitness Citywide Zoning Text Amendment application. There'll be a presentation from the Department of City Planning. Allison, or who will be presenting from City Planning? I'm sorry.
Will actually be me, Dylan Sandler.
Hi, Dylan. Thanks. Take it away.
Okay, thank you very much. So I'm Dylan. I'm a senior planner at the Department of City Planning. I know it's a full agenda, so I'm going to be pretty brief, maybe spend about 5 minutes presenting this citywide text amendment, and then happy to go into further details or answer any questions that you all have. So I'm just pulling up some slides now. Okay, are you seeing the presentation?
We got it.
Okay, great. So the purpose of this proposal is at its core to cut red tape for gyms and other health-related businesses that currently require a special permit to open and operate nearly anywhere in New York City. So the kinds of businesses that we're talking about that are affected by this proposal include large gyms, the chains like Blink and Planet Fitness. It also includes smaller gyms and studios ranging from yoga, Pilates, indoor cycling, rock climbing, and a range of other gyms. And it also includes therapeutic and wellness facilities. So this includes spas and licensed massage therapy. So currently there is a special permit. It's a Board of Standards and Appeals special permit that is required to open gyms, spas, and massage in New York City. This was a special permit that was created in the 1970s, directly tied to concerns about commercial sex that was occurring in massage parlors and health clubs, mostly in and around Times Square. And so this was an approach to use zoning, to use this special permit to require all of these businesses to go through a criminal background check and essentially prove that the owners and operators were not tied to criminal activity, and also go before community boards and the public to present what the facility would entail. Things have changed quite a lot since then. When this was created, there really wasn't the expectation that there would be commercial gyms as we know them today. There were some health clubs like the YMCA and other nonprofits, but the range of commercial gyms that we're now familiar with really didn't exist at the time. And so it wasn't anticipated that there would be hundreds of businesses and overwhelmingly very legitimate businesses that communities really like that would have to go through this pretty onerous process through zoning. In addition to there just being a lot of growth in this industry and a lot of demand from communities for these kinds of businesses, there's also been change related to regulation of massage therapy. So massage therapists are licensed by the state of New York, by the Education Department, and there's a public registry of all licensed massage therapists that is available to the public online. And yet these businesses continue to be very uniquely regulated in zoning. The special permit process typically takes about 6 or 7 months to go through. And we've spoken with a range of businesses, and it typically costs in the range of $30,000 to $50,000 in fees to architects and land use attorneys to go through the special permit process. And many of them also have to pay rent on a commercial space that they're technically not allowed to operate until they can get the special permit. In addition, the permit is not allowed in most C1 districts. This is local commercial districts that exist all around the city, and And even if businesses wanted to go through this special permit process, they wouldn't be allowed to operate in many of these commercial districts that allow other uses like restaurants and drugstores and laundromats and other commercial uses. And then finally, at a time when vacancy rates are quite high in some areas, we really want to avoid being inflexible with zoning in a way that makes it difficult for industries and businesses and growing industries to occupy this space. And as we've seen over the last year, this sector has been really significantly impacted by the pandemic, and we want to ensure that zoning doesn't make it difficult for these businesses to rebound and occupy space in neighborhoods. So moving into the details of the proposal, there's a lot of information on this slide, but at its core, we are proposing to entirely remove this BSA special permit. In zoning, it's currently referred to as physical, culture, or health establishment. So we would be removing this inscrutable term, and in its place, we would basically treat gyms and spas as commercial uses. If they are limited to 10,000 square feet in floor area, they would be use group 6. So they would be allowed in all commercial and manufacturing districts. For larger gyms and spas, they would be use group 9. So they would be slightly more limited in geography. So only the higher density C1 districts, as well as other commercial districts and manufacturing districts, would allow larger gyms. I think for the purposes of Community Board 1, I don't believe there are any of these lower density C1 districts. So essentially, all gyms and spas, unlimited in size, would be allowed in any commercial district within Community Board 1. For licensed massage therapy, we would now be treating this like we treat other licensed health professionals. So these would be considered ambulatory healthcare uses. This is use group 4 in zoning. And they would also be considered use group or healthcare offices, use group 6B. So these would be allowed in commercial districts and manufacturing districts and most residential districts. So lower density residential districts and some of the other boroughs would not permit these ambulatory healthcare uses. But for the purposes of Community Board 1, these would be allowed in all residential, commercial, and manufacturing districts. And I just want to note that unlicensed massage is not permitted anywhere in New York City or in New York State. And the zoning also makes it clear that massage without a license is not permissible and is enforceable by the Department of Buildings or the Office of Special Enforcement. And then finally, related to noise and vibration attenuation, currently when the BSA reviews special permits for gyms, they occasionally impose conditions related to noise and vibration. And so to maintain this protection for communities, we would require that higher intensity gyms, so those that include a lot of weights or exercise equipment, would need to have an acoustical engineer submit documentation to the Department of Buildings showing that the space is designed adequately to meet noise and vibration standards. So these are tied to national standards for impulsive noise, like dropping weights, or vibration that can occur from using cardio equipment in unison. This would apply in mixed use buildings in all commercial and mixed use districts. So it wouldn't apply in standalone facilities in the city or in manufacturing districts. And then low impact facilities, things like yoga, isometric exercise, youth martial arts, spas, would not have to demonstrate compliance with these noise and vibration standards, but they'd still be subject to the New York City Noise Code. So I will pause there and am more than happy to take any questions that the board has.
Okay, thanks, Dylan. I have a couple just to get us started. First, has there been any opposition to this proposal from any group, any individuals?
The main thing that we've heard is some concerns about commercial sex that does still occur within businesses that offer body rubs or use the term massage therapy. This proposal doesn't in any way sort of weaken the enforcement mechanism. So under the existing framework, any business that's offering massage by somebody who's not licensed can be shut down. We've maintained that, and the Office of Special Enforcement and DA offices and others are supportive, but we have heard concerns about enforcement. That's really the main concern that we've heard so far.
All right, and that seems to be the original rationale for the law to begin with, and I guess one could argue that if that's going to happen, it's going to happen anyway. And like you said, the enforcement mechanism is there anyway. I wanted to ask you specifically on the noise regulation, the noise attenuation piece of this. Has any thought been given to clarifying that either in the zoning text or in some follow-on regulation, that particularly where that commercial space, no matter the size, is in a residential building? So in other words, if it's a teeny tiny little gym inside of a building with 2 apartments above it, that whether they met the large gym heavy weights sort of standard anyway, that those outfits be required to also look at the noise issues.
Yeah. So the way it's written, any gym that has weights or that has exercise equipment would fall into that higher intensity category. So if it's in a mixed use building, they would need to demonstrate compliance. So
what about so imagine a situation with a smaller gym, but still, I don't know, maybe they do cardio stuff, maybe they do boxing. There's no heavy weights, but there's a lot of loud music, microphones, instructors. We've seen that around the financial district when we've grappled with a little bit of that in Community Board 1, rather. So, what would you say to those buildings and those places where the residents are saying, well, weights aside, there's still big noise issues?
Yeah. So, I mean, this is something that we've grappled with, and we work really closely with the BSA, who has been regulating these in the past. And then we basically put together a committee of leading acoustical engineers who have worked with gyms in New York City to try to come up with a standard that tried to strike the right balance of sort of being sufficiently protective, but also not sort of creating very onerous requirements where a meditation or a yoga studio has to spend thousands of dollars on an acoustical an attenuation plan. But the way it is structured, so something like a Zumba class that has sort of people jumping around and loud music, we think that would fall into that higher intensity category. So it's really written. There are limitations to how specific we can be in the zoning, because we could talk about Zumba and bar and all of these things, but in 5 years there will be different names and different kinds of activities that we haven't anticipated. But we have tried. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, I guess the point is, within defining high intensity, that thought be given to not just the kinds of things that are going on there, but what kinds of noise they can emit. I know you can't predict every fad of the future, but just to think about when that space is occurring in a mixed-use building with residential directly above it is really the key, I think, that those consider given. I don't want to belabor the point. My last question, I don't see any hands up from the rest of the committee, so it looks like I'm doing all the talking, is about the timing. When was this certified? When is the deadline? What are we looking at?
Yeah, this was certified with the City Planning Commission May 19th. It was a 60-day referral. So it is out to community boards and borough boards and borough presidents simultaneously until July 27th. And then we expect it to come back to the City Planning Commission for hearing sometime in late summer, early fall, and expect it to go to the City Council by November, sometime in sort of the late fall.
Okay. I do see Alice Blank has her hand up. Given that answer on the timing, Dylan, I want to also be mindful that we allow members of the public to ask questions. This will constitute our public hearing under 197 C, and we will, whether we can reach a resolution tonight or it needs to wait till next month, we can decide that a little while later. Committee members, Alice, would you go?
Thanks, Patrick, and thanks, Dylan. Yeah, just a quick question and follow up to Patrick, and I think you raised a really good point, Patrick, because most of the concerns that are raised about these establishments are often noise. What is the enforcement mechanism? So let's say that second floor residential owner is a little perturbed by whatever might be going on the third floor. What is the enforcement mechanism besides 311 or whatever?
Yeah. So the way it's structured is that proactively gyms would need to demonstrate that acoustical attenuation plan as a self-certification to the Department of Buildings before they can receive a certificate of occupancy. If there is a business that goes through that process, they open up and there's loud music or something that's occurring that is disturbing the second floor or neighbors, it would still go through the Department of Environmental Protection through the noise code. So the enforcement would be complaint based, and it would follow the noise code that exists for other commercial businesses.
Thanks.
Thank you, Alice. Any other committee members? I see Laura has her hand up.
Yes. Wait a second. I'm going to try to start my video. Okay. Sorry, I'm on a train. So my question is, does this then put these so are there no more applications to the land use committee then, because it wouldn't be a land use issue? So it would go to like the licensing committee, or how would that work? And how would the community board have any say in these things is one thing. And the other thing is, having done a lot of yoga classes, some are quiet and meditative and some are as loud as a Zumba class or a boxing class. I mean, I've seen the full range. And to Patrick's point, I think if you're living above or below one of these places, it would, I mean, I know this from spending a lot of time in yoga studios. There's a lot of complaints from the people who live above the yoga studios, even though I support making it easier for them to exist. Okay, now I'm going to go on mute.
Thanks, Laura.
Thank you. So to your first question, so this would become, gyms and spas and massage would become as of right uses. So they wouldn't go to community boards, to any of the committees or the community boards. They would basically, a business would occupy a space, and if they needed to change the certificate of occupancy, they would go to the Department of Buildings to do that. But there wouldn't be, this would sort of remove the layer of having businesses go to community boards. And then to the second, certainly understand that concern, and I think I think really we've tried to kind of structure it in a way that that gives the Department of Buildings some discretion to determine if a business seems like it's sort of that higher intensity where maybe they're calling it yoga, but it is a very noisy use, then that would be that could be considered a high intensity use. And all of these, again, could, if there were complaints, the DEP noise code could be used to enforce that or to address that. So I think it's a combination of assuming many businesses want to be good actors and trying to create a check to ensure that businesses design appropriately.
Okay, thank you, and also thank you, Patrick, for the call out. I'm sorry that I'm in transit and can't be fully there for my debut as your assistant.
Not at all.
For as long as it lasts, which that's another story. Okay. Anyway, thank you.
Thanks, Mariama. I see your hand up.
Hi, thanks. So on Fulton Street, we have like a bathhouse / gym that has gone through many evolutions over the past, I don't know, 40 years. My godmother used to take me there when I was a little girl. She had a membership and she'd take me there to go swimming. So it's there a long time. But like I said, it's evolved into many different things and different owners. Used to be called Excelsior. I think now it's called Spa 88. In any case, just to put it out there as an example, I'm not trying to pinpoint them in any kind of way. But over the years, because of those changes, there has been a need for the community to say something. And so that's why I'm using this as an example. I could see that becoming a necessity with other, similar type venues. Does this new as of right sort of cancel out any opportunity for public input, or just the community board?
So this would treat gyms and spas the same way that zoning treats other commercial uses in that sense. So they would be as of right that would remove community boards and remove the public from the process of approving or allowing these businesses. So really it's kind of the process of removing a special permit is kind of the opportunity for community boards to weigh in and make sure that we're structuring this effectively and appropriately. But then each individual business would they would need to meet health code and noise code and building code and fire code and all of the other sort of mechanisms that exist within that as of right framework. But there wouldn't be any kind of discretionary review or public involvement in the opening of any individual business.
So maybe that's something to consider, a way, because we always had an opportunity to call them in. They're in existence. No one ever attempted to shut them down completely, but there's been times when the community has needed to, have a conversation with whomever was the proprietor at any given time. It sounds like this might, remove that capability as well, which maybe we don't necessarily want to do. Could be something to consider.
Okay, I wanted to ask a quick follow-up. I know we have to move on, but Dylan, you mentioned that this would be subject to self-certification, presumably by the sound engineers and not the architect of record, or would it be both? And is that really where we're meant to get some comfort that the businesses will be, to your point, good actors?
Yeah, that's the way that we've been thinking about it, that it would be a self-certification from a licensed acoustical engineer. And so this, it may be that the architect has, an acoustical engineer on staff. We would think in many cases that the business would be working separately with an acoustical engineer who has expertise in this area.
Okay. All right, I appreciate that. So I want to, with Diana's help, move on. I don't see any other committee member hands up with questions on this one. I want to move to the public to see whether we have anyone specific to this topic. We're talking about the health and fitness citywide zoning application. Does anyone from the public wish to be heard or provide testimony?
Patrick, it's Laura. I have one more question, which is what is the decibel level that is the standard?
So I'm not the expert on that, and I guess the main thing to communicate is that we worked with this panel of acoustical engineers to come up with basically national standards to tie this to. So it links to the International Standardization Organization, their code about managing impulsive noise and vibration. As well as the American National Standards Institute has similar guidelines.
Look it up. I would be curious to hear what that is.
Yeah, and I think it both references decibel levels, but also references methodologies for how to attenuate noise. So different ways of isolating equipment and isolating vibration. But I don't have all of the details immediately, and I guess we can certainly, with the community board, share the national standards that this references.
I mean, I would really like that, and then I would like to play something that's that level of sound and see how it is. To tell you the truth, just curious. Anyway, that's my last thing. Thank you for a great presentation.
Thank you.
Thanks, Laura. Do any members of the public wish to be heard? I am not seeing any hands up. So with that,
I have another question, if there's nobody else.
Yeah, sure. Miriam, go ahead.
So this honor system, we use that for things like the scaffolding already. It does not work in that case. In fact, We've had members of the city council propose bills, members of the state legislature propose bills on how we can sort of enforce this self-reporting system, and get people to be honest and maybe impose fines if they're not honest. And nothing's ever been figured out. We're just stuck with this system where people leave scaffolding up for decades, and then it breeds whatever it breeds. We can apply that to any situation, and that could be the outcome. It's just like human nature, I guess. You give people the opportunity to do whatever the heck they want, and they do. That's the experience thus far, and not my opinion. We could check it out. That's the experience thus far with things like this, like again the scaffolding, for example, that the DOB does not enforce the rules in that regard.
Well, we have time, and by the way, I just want to note there were no members of the public who, oh, I see Paul Hovitz has his hand up. Paul, are you wishing to speak on this topic about physical, the health and fitness citywide zoning amendment?
Yes, thank you, Patrick. Just a short remark. I very strongly agree with Mariama. I think we've seen so many issues like street vendors and parking permit abuse and so many other things that we've said, well, don't worry, the city will enforce that. And we know with the community board, we keep telling people, call up, get a complaint number, give it to the community board so we'll follow up. But so many things fall, through the cracks. And I would advise caution on this. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you, Paul. Any other members of the public wish to be heard? Hearing none, we will close the public hearing. Members of the committee, it sounds like we have a little bit of time to think about this. Certainly if this was certified on, what did I hear, 19th or 21st of May, we have through the end of July within our 60-day time frame. So we could revisit this next month for resolution, or we could vote on it now. What do people think? Because I'm sort of calling for a straw poll on whether to move it now, or do people want to think about what they've heard a little bit?
Paul Goldstein says vote now.
Okay, thanks, Paul. Jason, you have your hand.
I'm going to say vote later since time, and into some things that I thought about after Mariana and Paul and another Paul spoke. And if other people want to do that, I'm in for that.
For waiting? Sorry, Jason, it cut out.
For waiting, getting on to the next topic, having a short discussion next time about it since we have the time, not contentiously, just to talk more about it and move on to the next topic.
That would be my inclination as well. Joe? Joe Lerner, see your hand up?
Yes. How will we answer the problem of the difficulty of speaking to them when we have a problem? That's why I don't want to vote now, because I don't know how we'll answer that problem.
Okay. Yeah, I'm willing to wait. Let's think about it. Rosa, you were going to pipe in. I didn't mean it that way, but you were going to comment whether we should wait.
I would just say vote now.
Okay. Sounds like 3 to 2, 1.
Patrick, this is Allison from City Planning. Just to quickly insert myself, I just want to remind everyone that this is a citywide text. Dylan and his team are going to all 59 community boards, so we will likely not be able to return in July to present again, but we can answer any questions in the meantime.
Thanks, I appreciate the clarification. So it would be a discussion next month, but any questions? When do we do this? If you, let's put it over to next month, because I do want folks, if they have questions or thoughts a little deeper on this, to be able to put those to city planning. If you can email Diana with your questions, committee members, let's say by the end of the month, we can get them to city planning, get them answered, and have them read on the record at our July meeting, and then vote on it then. All right. Okay. Thank you, Dylan. Thank you, CPC team, for that. GCP team. We are going to go to the second item and our last item, which is the 250 Water Street ULURP application. This application comes before the Land Use, Zoning, and Economic Development Committee of Community Board 1 on certification from the City Planning Commission for 6 related land use actions to facilitate the development of the site known as 250 Water Street. The applicant is 250 Seaport District LLC, which I understand is a subsidiary or affiliate of Howard Hughes Corporation. A copy of the complete application is available on the New York City Department of City Planning's zoning application portal website. Just Google that site, you'll find it. When you go there, search for 250 Water Street and click on the Public Documents tab. That's where you're going to find the voluminous documents that make up this application. At a meeting on May 17th of 2021, the New York City Planning Commission certified this application for public review under the Uniform Land Use Review Procedure, or ULURP, which begins with, of course, the affected community board, as required by Section 197C, subsection E1A. Manhattan Community Board 1 has notified the public of this application, and upon that public notification is required by Section 197C, subsection E1B of the New York City Charter. Tonight we'll be conducting our public hearing on this application. Under the Charter, the Community Board has 60 days to conduct its review of a certified application. Now, in this case, CB1's time to review has been extended until our full board meeting on July 27th. I believe our technical deadline may have been July 26th. So it's effectively one day extension. We'll be fine on the timing. So basically, we do not expect to come to a vote and resolution of the committee at tonight's meeting. The committee will have the applicant back again in July, where the committee and only the committee will have a chance to ask further questions. I want to be very clear about that. Tonight is the public's chance to talk. Next month, the public will not. It will be only the committee. And we'll ask further questions, debate, and come to a vote on a resolution, which will then be presented to the entire Community Board 1 board at the July full board meeting, again on, I think, the 27th of July. Before we begin, I want to note some ground rules. This is a public hearing, so the bulk of what we're going to do tonight is hear from speakers from the public. But first, the applicant's team will have a chance to make a presentation on its project and on its application. And then after that, we intend to allow members of the Land Use Committee 3 minutes each. And we'll do this like we did with the borough-based jails application. We'll follow the congressional style, where I'll just go down the list of the committee members. You can either speak, ask questions, cede your time. But again, we don't expect to come to a vote on a resolution tonight. After the committee members go, we will open the floor to public speakers. Speakers will be recognized in the order in which you signed up. If you have not done so already and you wish to speak, Diana is providing in the link a link in the chat. I believe I saw it there. It's also the sign up link. And you can sign up. Now, because I recognize that some people might hear something in the presentation or in the committee members' questions, or even in the other speakers' comments, which might make them want to speak up, I intend to keep the sign up open throughout the duration of this public hearing. Speakers will be limited to up to 2 minutes, and if you've ever spoken at a hearing like this, that you will know that 2 minutes goes very fast. So I cannot stress this enough. Get to your point. Lead with your strongest feelings and keep it succinct. But again, that 2 minutes, it goes fast, and we will cut the mic at 2 minutes. Look, this is the most reasonable and efficient way we've learned over the years to conduct public hearings, particularly like here, where we anticipate a great deal of public interest. So in that regard, we do expect a lot of speakers tonight. We expect that this meeting will go very deep into the evening. We're prepared for that. And we'll be here, I'll be here until everyone who wants to speak, albeit only one time and only for 2 minutes, has gotten a chance to speak. And a couple of other things, we understand that some of the public may have already formed some very deep, very passionate opinions on this project. I respect that, whether including folks who are against it, including folks who are in favor of this project. But let me stress this. We will maintain decorum. That means keep your remarks clean, keep them on topic, and perhaps most importantly, don't make them personal. I'm the dad of tween and teenage boys, and I'm used to refereeing, and for the most part, members of the applicants team and members of other interest groups who I know are on one side or another of this project are grown-ups, and they can take the heat, and I do not intend to be refereeing anything, but if I deem that any comments have become unduly personal, I will ask that that speaker be muted. Again, we will maintain decorum, and we will maintain order in this hearing. So with that, let's turn it over to the applicant team. And I would just ask that each speaker, if you please identify yourself by name and who you're with so that we can have a clean presentation. Adam, I see you highlighted and lighted up first. Are you heading us off?
No, I think Saul's going to kick it off.
Great.
I'll be speaking later.
Great. Saul, welcome in. You have the floor.
And I appreciate that introduction and thank you all for your time. Good evening. I'm Saul Sherrill, President of the New York Tri-State Region of the Howard Hughes Corporation. Also with me this evening are my colleagues from HHC, including Adam Meister, and our consultants, SOM and Fried Frank, as well as others that you see there on the screen. Captain Jonathan Bulware from the Seaport Museum is also here this evening to answer any questions that you may have. As we're now in the ULURP process, and this is a new forum for this project, with some committee members not as familiar with our proposal, I'd like to very quickly review my personal perspective on the Seaport. I spent a lot of time at the Seaport growing up and was very aware of its significance. Professionally, when I joined Howard Hughes just over 5 years ago, I viewed the chance to be involved with revitalizing and preserving the Seaport as an honor, a true once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I take it very seriously. The Seaport is much more than buildings. It's about the people who live and work here, and HHC is a proud member of this community. It's in that spirit that I've sought to strengthen our community's connection to our neighbors and to make sure that all of our projects benefit from the input of local residents, businesses, nonprofits, cultural and civic organizations, as well as our local elected officials, and of course, this community board. Over the past year and a half, amid the COVID pandemic, we worked shoulder to shoulder with this community to deliver food to our neighbors in need, to get meals and PPE to first responders, and to contribute substantial funding to help as many Seaport and Lower Manhattan small businesses as possible to survive the economic crisis. The plan we present to you today is in keeping with HHC's commitment to preserve the character and vibrancy of the Seaport, which has included preserving and refurbishing historic buildings along the area's cobblestone streets, reconstructing Pier 17, and working to complete the restoration of the historic Tin Building. HHC has made an enormous investment to help ensure that the Seaport continues to thrive, bringing 19th century buildings and the waterfront to life with independent retailers and diverse recreational, culinary, educational, and cultural programming. And we will continue to do so. To date, we've built and renovated more than 450,000 square feet of space, investing to date over $1 billion, while generating some 1,750 new jobs at the Seaport and over 200 million of economic activity each year. It's been particularly important to me that HHC provides essential support for the South Street Seaport Museum, which, as you know, has been the founder and the anchor of the historic district since 1967. With its collection of historic artifacts, its home on Schermerhorn Row, and the fleet of beautiful historic tall ships, the museum is a recognized steward and interpreter of New York City's maritime history. Since last fall, we've been engaged in the Landmarks Preservation Commission process, during which our originally proposed building has been significantly modified and reduced in height and scale in response to feedback from the community stakeholders and LPC commissioners. The process culminated in the Landmark Commission's approval of the thoughtful design by our architects and urban planners at SOM. The design has a low base that is appropriate to the historic streetscape with a significant setback for the taller portion of the building, which is placed towards Pearl and Peck Slip away from the historic core of the district. With the proposal before you this evening, we have a unique opportunity to transform the outmoded parking lot at 250 Water Street, which we can agree has been an unsightly and unproductive gap in the urban fabric of this community for over 50 years. The proposed dynamic mixed-use building will complete the historic district, beckoning pedestrians, activating a safer streetscape, and increasing foot traffic to local businesses that desperately need it. A key goal of this project is to bring permanent, deeply affordable housing to this affluent area, applying smart urban planning principles by adding residential density near one of the city's largest job centers and public transit hubs. And through the sale of the air rights, the plan will generate funds to help the South Street Seaport Museum reopen, renovate, and plan for its future expansion in the heart of the historic district. HHC is committed to continuing to revitalize and invest in the Seaport for many years to come. We want to work with you in a productive and constructive manner, and we believe that the 250 Water Street project can play a vital role in the inclusive economic recovery of this special part of New York City when it needs it most. Thank you for your consideration and for all that each of you do for the community. And now I'll turn it over to the SOM team. Are you there?
Thanks.
I think
Saul.
Greg?
Can you hear me?
Yep, I promised I
All
was going to ask that when I started, so I just went right into it.
No, very good, very good. Hi all. My name is Keith O'Connor. I'm Director of Urban Design and Planning at SOM. And before my colleague Chris Cooper presents a summary of the proposed project, I wanted to provide just a bit of planning and urban design context for this land use application. As you know, the project is located at 250 Water Street in Lower Manhattan. It's just south of the Brooklyn Bridge. Site, as we all know, is well served by public transportation, especially the many subway lines that can be accessed via the nearby Fulton Street and City Hall stations. In addition, the site is very well served by several bus routes that run along Pearl Street, by water taxi and ferry stops on the East River, and also dedicated bike lanes that are part of the East River waterfront esplanade. 250 sites currently, as Saul mentioned, a large surface parking lot. It's located between Pearl Street and Water Street and between Peck Slip and Beekman Street. It's proximate to the heart of Lower Manhattan's financial district and commercial core, but it occupies a unique full block site at the edge of the South Street Seaport Historic District. It's about 3 blocks from the waterfront, across Pearl Street from Southbridge Towers, southwest of Peck Slip School, and proximate to the Pearl Street Playground, Titanic Memorial Park, and the new Peck Slip Park. In recent years, continuing a 2-decade trend, Community District 1 continues to experience significant residential growth fueled by conversions, by new development, and also the renovation of historic structures. And increasingly, the area is becoming even more vibrant mixed-use community, albeit one that is not as diverse and affordable as other parts of the city. In the blocks immediately surrounding the 250 Water Street site is a vibrant neighborhood filled with active streets and sidewalks, lined with local restaurants, community essentials, retail shops, diverse open spaces, pharmacy, grocery store, a boutique hotel, public and private schools, galleries, and a host of unique attractions. Also evident is the imprint of the South Street Seaport Museum. Since its founding in 1967, the museum has always had responsibilities for preserving and interpreting the district, and to this day it continues to serve as a critical cultural anchor, an interpreter of the district, and a steward of unique collections, including the historic ships. As part of the land use and regulatory context for this application, 2 actions in particular are worthy of note. First, shown here, in 1972, just a few years after the founding of the South Street Seaport Museum, the city created the Seaport Transfer District. It was a land use mechanism that established granting lots and receiving lots to facilitate the transfer of development rights in order to preserve historic structures of Schermerhorn Row and to help generate financial support for the museum. The second one was 5 years later, 1977, when the Landmarks Preservation Commission designated the South Street Seaport Historic District. It is worth noting, as shown in the map on right, that the original boundary of the historic district, within that boundary were both granting lots and 2 full blocks of receiving lots, as were delineated in the 1972 Seaport Transfer District. When the boundary of the historic district was extended in 1989, an additional 1 block area of receiving lots was also included in the boundary of the historic district. So with that as a very brief summary of the land use context for this application, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Chris, who's going to describe a bit about the physical context of the site and then talk you through the proposed design for 250 Water Street.
Thank you, Keith. So I am Chris Cooper, and I'm going to walk through the design of the building focused on massing, use, and streetscape activation. Starting with the site of 250 Water Street. Currently, it is a surface parking lot at the edge of the South Street Seaport Historic District. The site is bound by 4 streets, each with different scales, uses, and characteristics. And it's a city block with uniquely different conditions from its east side relative to its west side. Next. The proposed massing responds to these conditions and is composed of 2 parts: a low, full block, largely commercial base that mimics the heights of its facing neighbors, and a tall residential bar aligned with Pearl Street. Now, it's important to note that the environmental impact studied in the DEIS and included in the land use application certified by city planning represent a maximum building envelope larger than the current proposal. Specifically, on the left is a diagram showing the maximum building envelope in blue as studied in the DEIS. And you'll note that the height was 395 feet. But the current building, as approved by the LPC, is represented in the diagram on the right. This is exactly the result of the LPC process, and it is lower and smaller than the maximum envelope evaluated in the DEIS. Proposed land use actions under consideration naturally facilitate the smaller building envelope as depicted on the right. The land use application will be modified to reflect the smaller maximum building envelope as the process proceeds. The specific actions of the application will be presented shortly by Fried Frank. But in the meantime, let's look at the proposed building in more detail. The building use is proposed as a vibrant mix of commercial and residential programs. The total building height is 324 feet, composed of a residential bar shown in yellow and green, and a primarily commercial base of 74 feet, 4 inches in height. The area distribution is noted on the left with the anticipated ZFA totaling 550,000 square feet. The residential portion of this is composed of 15 floors of market rate for sale condominiums, along with 4 floors of affordable rental units. The separation of the two is strictly a function of for sale units rather than for rent units. There's 1 level of amenity that sits at the base of that bar, directly above the base. And the base itself is primarily commercial office space, 4 full floors, levels 2 through 5. The ground floor, which we'll look at in just shortly in great detail, is a mix of building entrances and lobbies, a community facility, and neighborhood retail. There is 1 level below grade, which is primarily parking. So we'll start, and to speak of the massing, we'll speak a bit about the height and the massing distribution. This elevation represents the height of the neighboring buildings along Water Street. You can see the diagram in the upper right-hand corner of the screen that shows the buildings that we're highlighting. And shaded more lightly in the image is the scale of the buildings throughout Lower Manhattan. Our proposed massing, a 2-part composition, steps down the massing from the Water Street datum and finds its height much closer to its immediate neighbors in Southbridge. The 2-part massing, base and bar is represented here in plan in its immediate context. The darker tone is the base and the lighter is the bar. The massing responds to the varying context of the four sides of the block, including street widths, building heights, and historic character. Water Street presents itself very differently from Pearl Street. So the tall bar is shown here, aligned with the 90-foot wide and active Pearl Street. The setbacks of the bar from the historic structures on Water and Beekman are larger than the width of the street itself, 45 feet, 6 to 60 feet on Water, and 90 feet on Beekman. We'll look at a few views to demonstrate the massing and demonstrate that approach in the context. Starting on Pearl Street, the tall bar is addressed here. It registers its alignment with Pearl Street. The massing is segmented into distinct units to better represent its residential use and break down the perception of bulk facing onto the wide street. Stepping across Pearl Street, looking up Water, the two-part massing demonstrates a scale shift between the low commercial base facing historic structures and the tall residential bar facing Pearl Street. Stepping into the historic district on Beekman, looking west, we can further appreciate here the distinction between the low base and the tall bar. The 90-foot setback disengages the base and the bar to better enhance the context. And that effect is similar to the view from Water Street looking south. Low base relative to the context and the bar setback. And in the broader context, there's a clear stepping in scale from the towers of Lower Manhattan down towards the waterfront. So we'll shift gears from massing and scale and focus at the level of the pedestrian and share some street level planning, use, and activation. The 250 block is bound by 4 streets, each with different uses, scales, and characters. The site today, as shown in this photo from Pearl and Beekman, demonstrates that the streetscape presence on the block is primed for improvement. And the scale and character, as mentioned, is really quite distinct on each face of the block, particularly east to west. Water Street, shown here, is narrow, cut Belgian block paving, and an opposing facade of low, continuous masonry buildings. This stands in stark contrast to Pearl Street, with 4 active lanes of traffic and adjoining parking lanes, wider sidewalks, traffic lights at each intersection, and a context of independent, tall buildings. So let's take that into planning now and look at the proposed streetscape in the ground floor plan, and we'll start with the streetscape itself. The most important item to note here is that we've focused the primary points of access onto Pearl Street. This is a direct response really to the width and scale of Pearl Street today. So vehicular access specifically enters on Pearl Street in 2 locations. First, the building services, the loading is oriented to Pearl with an internal loading dock of 2 berths accessed directly onto Pearl Street. And second, vehicular access to the below-grade parking is also entered from Pearl Street. The exit is directed south to Beekman, which is a one-way routing traffic directly back to Pearl Street. The primary uses, commercial, office, and residential, are also addressed and accessed from Pearl Street. A secondary convenience entrance is directed towards Water Street. The sidewalks surrounding the site are all distinctive, continuing the use of bluestone and Belgian block with street trees and lighting to match the context and character of the historic district. As we look at the planning of the block itself, we imagine an active streetscape on all faces of the building and have tried to really minimize the areas of opaque facade. So in yellow, you see the single residential lobby, which is a through block lobby. Its primary entrance is on Pearl Street, as I mentioned, with a secondary entrance facing into the district on Water Street. The commercial office lobby, shown in blue, is directly adjacent. In retail, shown in pink here, is broken into small neighborhood retail frontages and meant to really activate the streetscape on all sides of the block. And in the bottom right of the screen here, on the northeast corner, is the community facility shown in green, facing onto Peck Slip. So we'll look at that plan now projected into elevation starting on Pearl Street. And we see the low base in the darker brick color. And that base is broken at the center of Pearl Street to allow for the touchdown of the tall residential bar and to identify the entrance on Pearl Street. And so that's marked residential entry here. And the office entry that I pointed out in plan is to the right of that, with parking entrance to the right of that, and then infill of retail, and then a loading dock of 2 berths to the left of this image, closer to the north of the site. As we flip to Water Street, you see no primary entrances here, no vehicular entrances here, as this is the narrow street, the cobbled street that faces into the district. And there is, though, one articulation at the center where we break the street facade and give variation in height to identify the residential entrance. So this is the other side of that through block residential lobby. So one lobby, one entrance on Pearl and one entrance on Water, both feeding into the same residential lobby. And then we'll take a quick tour before we talk about the specific actions. We'll take a quick tour around the building just to see the base, starting on Pearl Street, where we see the break in the expression of the base to create the residential entrance and to tie the residential bar down to street level. You can see the integration of loading and office and other entrances within the datum of the storefronts. As we start to move closer, we can see the formal entrance of that residential lobby. This has a, on Pearl Street, we believe that there's appropriateness for a grander entrance and a clear articulation of where the residential front door is. And then just to the right, small office entrance, and to the right of that, the pull in for the drop off of cars. As we go to the corner, you now start to see the scale of the small neighborhood retail fitting into the storefronts and fitting into the bays as they move around the base of the building. As we flip from the other view, now looking up Beekman, we see again the scale of the neighborhood retail. The third bay up is the exit for the vehicles from the parking that then loop back to the traffic light that you see in the distance on Pearl Street. As we stand now on Water Street looking south, there's a clear view here of the second residential entrance, a formal entrance, canopied with retail, neighborhood retail on either side of that entrance. And then moving towards Peck Slip, we see again the scale of the retail. Here we're seeing very specifically the corner of the community facility. So we've given the most prominent retail corner, let's say, to the community facility so it can face onto and have a relationship directly to Peck Slip. And just a closing view looking north on Water Street, where we see together the notion of the low commercial base, and then the setback tall residential bar with low storefront and retail at the base. With that, I will pass it now to Wesley to talk through our land use actions.
Yes, thank you, Chris. Wesley O'Brien of Free Frank, Land Use Counsel to Howard Hughes. Let's start on the next slide, please. So on the screen, you see a list of the land use actions that are proposed in order to facilitate the project. We're going to discuss each of these in turn. Next slide. The first action that we are seeking is a modification to the existing South Street Seaport Pier 17 large-scale general development site plan. The existing large-scale development covers the area of Pier 17, shown in red at the water's edge. The proposed modifications would expand the large-scale plan to include 250 Water Street, shown in blue, and it will also include the pedestrian streets, shown in orange, which will serve as the spine connecting the new upland gateland to the district at 250 Water Street to the water's edge. And I should note also that there will be a zoning text amendment that's proposed, confirming that the pedestrian streets as demapped streets may be incorporated into the large-scale general development. The expanded large-scale general development will also facilitate a superior distribution of bulk within the project area by allowing unused floor area to be redistributed from the water's edge at Pier 17 to the upland portion of the sub-district at 250 Water Street. Accordingly, the application is also requesting a large-scale general development special permit to allow for the distribution of approximately 208,000 zoning square feet of unused development rights from Pier 17 to 250 Water. Next slide, please. The large-scale general development special permit will also allow for modifications to the maximum zoning envelope. So to the right is a section showing the maximum envelope from the draft EIS and the application with the LPC approved massing shown in gray. As described in the application, the large-scale special permit would modify the minimum setbacks required along all frontages. And as proposed, the special permit would allow for the building to exceed the maximum building height of 85 feet and go up to a maximum base height of 85 feet and go up to a maximum base height of 105 feet. And finally, the application requested a special permit allowing for a maximum building height, which would exceed the maximum permitted of 120 feet up to 390 feet. Next slide, please. But as Chris discussed previously, the project team is working to revise the application to reflect the massing that was approved by the Landmarks Commission, and will be filing a revision of that, which reduces the degree of these waivers. So under the revised filing, the base heights will comply with the zoning regulations so that no waiver will be required or requested with respect to the maximum base height. The waivers requested with regard to setbacks will be reduced as the setbacks, the deeper setbacks that Chris showed you, will comply with underlying zoning along Water and Beekman Street. So no waivers are required in those areas. And then finally, that the proposed building height is going to be reduced from 395 feet to 324 feet in line with the LPC approval, further reducing the requested waiver. Next slide, please. So finally, the large-scale general development special permit will modify the street wall requirement along Pearl Street. Along Pearl Street, the building base is required to be constructed to the street line, but in order to allow for articulation at the entrance area, a modification is sought to allow the setback shown in red at the right. So moving on then from the large-scale special permit, on this slide we'll also discuss the curb cut authorization. A 20-foot wide curb cut is proposed to be located along Pearl Street in the area outlined with the red box at the left. In this district, no curb cut is allowed for an accessory parking garage on a wide street. As such, an authorization is being requested in order to allow for a curb cut to be placed at the location, constructed at the location shown. Notably, this is near the location of the existing curb cut for the parking lot, except that as proposed, the curb cut would be narrower than the existing curb cut. It would also allow for vehicles to enter the site directly from Pearl Street without entering into the sub-district. Next slide, please. The application also seeks a certification to allow for the transfer of the remaining 30,000 square feet of development rights from the Seaport Development Rights Bank to the development site. This will increase the base floor area at the site from approximately 312,000 square feet to 342,000 square feet, with an additional 208,000 that we discussed earlier from Pier 17 coming, which would come via the large-scale special permit. The proposed project could then be constructed to approximately 550,000 square feet. In order to allow for the transfer of the 30,000 square feet from the Seaport Development Rights Bank, a text amendment is being requested in order to designate 250 Water Street as a receiving site. So then, next slide, please. Finally, we'll discuss design changes and the actions that are proposed with regard to Pier 17. The application is proposing to modify the Pier 17 Traffic Management Plan and Restrictive Declaration. Currently, they only allow for delivery vehicles to use the access drive shown in blue at on the image at the top. The application is proposing to allow for passenger vehicle drop-offs on the access road in an effort to better integrate Pier 17 into the street network and to facilitate public access to the pier. Other design changes that are being proposed at the pier include a realignment of the northern end of the loop road, and that's shown in the image to the bottom right, marked as B. This would accommodate a Con Edison gas meter at the 10 building while maintaining the existing pedestrian clear path. Also, as shown in image A, safety bollards are proposed parallel to South Street in order to increase pedestrian safety and specifically to provide protection during large events. These bollards have been designed in coordination with NYPD counterterrorism. Additionally, guard booths, 3 guard booths are being proposed along the access drive. The existing traffic management plan requires that 3 flaggers be placed at locations around the access drive so that they can direct vehicles and ensure pedestrian and bicycle safety. The 3 small guard booths are proposed in order to provide the flaggers shelter during inclement weather. The waterfront access areas at Pier 17 will otherwise remain unchanged by this application. Finally, I'll note that the application proposes to add a new skylight to the roof of the Pier 17 building in order to allow natural light to filter down into the building. In total, these design changes will all be reflected on the modified large-scale general development site plan, which we already discussed. Also, will require an authorization to modify the waterfront design regulations with respect to the bollard design and layout. And finally, will require a new waterfront certification to confirm compliance with the waterfront regulations. Next slide, please. I'll also note that the draft environmental impact statement was prepared in connection with the application. At the request of the board, however, we are not presenting the DEIS tonight, but we'll be returning to meet with Community Board 1's Environmental Protection Committee in July, and we'll discuss the DEIS in detail at that time. And so with that, I'll turn it back to Adam Meister.
You're on mute.
Thanks, had to be the first one. Good evening, everyone. Adam Meister with Howard Hughes. In addition to some of the attributes that Keith and Chris spoke about related to urban design and context, I'm going to highlight some of the proposal's key goals and benefits. Given the very limited supply of affordable housing in New York City, and particularly downtown, the 250 Water Street project seeks to address this critical need. Currently, there's only 2.5% of the housing stock that qualifies as affordable in Community District 1, and rents are some of the highest in the city. As many of you know, Southbridge Towers recently converted to market rate from Mitchell-Lama, and as a result, the apartments are out of reach for many working families. We're proposing approximately 70 units at 250 Water Street of deeply affordable rental apartments consistent with MIH parameters at 40% of area median income. This will be the first of its kind in CB1, creating more affordability and diversity in the district. Next. Also, at this critical time, 250 Water Street is an ideal site near a major transit hub, jobs, high quality schools, to create economic development as we emerge from the pandemic. The project will create thousands of jobs and over $1 billion in economic and fiscal benefits upfront during construction and on an ongoing basis. This consists of approximately 1,600 jobs during construction and over 1,700 permanent jobs, along with hundreds of millions in wages, economic output, and tax revenues during both phases. Next. Another key focus of ours is environmental sustainability and resilience. As a company, HHC is committed to supporting best practices in sustainability and environmental stewardship throughout our portfolio. And at the Seaport in New York City, especially, we recognize how important it is to play a direct role in addressing climate change issues. For the 250 Water Street, we're incorporating a range of sustainable and resilient building strategies, such as enhanced mobility and connectivity, energy efficiency to minimize carbon emissions, wet-dry floodproofing, and water conservation. The project will also incorporate air quality measures and substantial landscaped outdoor space for residents and tenants. Next. The team also has spoken about many of the specific land use and urban design features, including that the project integrates a vibrant mix of uses located in the context of a walkable and transit-rich live, work, play, and learn neighborhood. I want to also highlight the community facility space, which we're proposing at the corner of Peck Slip and Water Street. The approximately 5,000 square foot space will be located nearby the Peck Slip Park and across from Peck Slip School. We look forward to developing the use and programming of the space and to the community input as we move through the review process. Now I'm going to turn it back to Saul to wrap up with a discussion of the air rights funding framework.
Thank you, Adam. And thank you, everyone else. As you know, the project makes possible significant funding to the Seaport Museum needed to put the museum on a firm financial footing, advance the renovation and reopening of the existing museum buildings, as well as put the museum in a position to fundraise for the new building that has been approved previously by LPC. This funding support is made possible through HHC's purchase of unused development rights on Pier 17. These development rights are, however, part of HHC's current leasehold interest in the site and can be used by HHC on the leasehold premises. However, since the underlying ownership of the development rights is in the city, in order for HHC to use them outside the Pier 17 leasehold premises, they must be purchased from the city. Without HHC's consent or participation, the air rights cannot be used or transferred until the expiration of the lease in 2072. HHC's purchase of the development rights from the city generates a source of funding, an amount which would be directed to the museum. Our original proposal for 250 Water Street was for a building of over 750,000 square feet, approximately 415,000 square feet of which would have been derived from the purchase of Pier 17 development rights. By our estimation, this would have generated approximately $15 million available to the museum and enabled the inclusion of affordable housing on the site at no cost to the city. The LPC process has resulted in a building of approximately 550,000 square feet, consisting of approximately 200,000 square feet of Pier 17 development rights purchased from the city and transferred to 250 Water Street. This results in a reduction of more than 50% of the air rights to be purchased, a large portion of which are utilized for the affordable housing aspect. We are pleased by the result at LPC, but recognize that due to the sizable reduction in the building square footage, the development rights sale will not alone produce $50 million of support for the museum. We are working very closely with the city to close this gap. Those discussions are ongoing and we are confident that there are ways to get there. We'll be happy to return to the board when there's more to report, and we look forward to hearing your comments this evening. And at this point, I'm going to hand it back, to the community board.
Okay, thank you, Saul.
Thank you, Patrick.
So, as I mentioned at the outset, folks, there's no need to do the raise hand feature. If you want to speak as a member of the public, you'll have the opportunity to do that. We're going to go in the order that you signed up. You can sign up. Again, the link is in the chat. First, we're going to begin with the committee members. Committee members, as I mentioned, we're going to do this congressional style. You're each going to get 3 minutes. We're not going to automatically mute folks, but please use your 3 minutes wisely. I'll remind you when your time is up. Tonight's really about the public's opportunity to speak. So speeches and whatnot from committee members, I think we could save really till next month. And we'll have an opportunity for really probing questions then as well. But I want to go down the list of committee members in alphabetical order. We'll start with Megan Brown Kennedy. Megan, if you want, you can either use your 3 minutes or cede your time, and we'll move on. Are you able to unmute, Megan?
Yeah, I'll cede my time for right now.
Great, thanks. We'll move on to Alice Blank.
Oh boy, I really have questions, more than 3 minutes of comments, although I could easily do that too. But could we, is this the time for questions, Patrick, I assume?
You can ask, but you can use your 3 minutes for questions.
Okay.
Yeah, just...
Okay, well, I hope that their response is not part of my 3 minutes. But anyway, so I feel like we didn't really cover the zoning lot B aspect of this project description. So that sort of is really part of this large scale general development plan, which is really a critical part, and specifically the demapping of the street portions. Is there any way to see that, or could one of you opine a little more on why we have to be looking at demapping city streets as part of this proposal, and specifically the pedestrian plaza and the garden bar at Fulton Street, which seems to have privatized a good portion of that street that exists? Could you just talk a little bit about the thinking on that and where the public benefit lies in the working of the streets being demapped?
Yes, and I can clarify one point there. The pedestrian streets were demapped in 1983.
Correct. Right.
So that has already occurred, and so it's really connecting these two these two significant developments within the district, and using that as the spine to connect those elements through the pedestrian realm.
Sorry, right, I misspoke, thank you. But could you describe why you need the spine and what that garden bar, as it's called in your project description, is doing for the public? And is that a private space in the street that's permanent? And other possible things that are going to happen with this spine? These are city streets owned by the city, or I guess they're DMAP, but they're still pedestrian access city streets, I assume. So I just don't understand. If you could explain to the public why we're doing that spine as part of this large scale development plan.
But before Wesley clarifies that as it relates to the large scale general development, the garden bar is licensed to HHC through the concession agreement with EDC. So it's not, the garden bar is not, it's nothing new that's being proposed as part of this, and these actions don't affect that.
And I guess what I would clarify, Alice, I'm not sure you're familiar, is that we pay the city rent for the garden bar, and that rent is then transferred over, or I think, EDC has agreed to transfer that rent over the funding to the museum to help them support the rent. So the rent goes from EDC to the museum for the garden.
So Saul, thanks a lot. Can you just describe why you have this spine? Like, why is this part of the large scale general development plan? Like, why do we?
I can't, I'm going to leave that to the lawyers because that's not my specialty. I can only tell you there are no plan changes to that spine that I'm aware of in this process.
What can be built in those streets?
That's, I don't think anything as part of this is considering that, but I'm going to let the lawyers speak because I'm not.
Okay.
Yeah, that's correct. Nothing can be built in the streets. The floor area was removed from the streets in 1983 when it was demapped. So there is no new floor area there to be constructed.
Well, okay, I'm going to let it go, but I'm not getting the answer to why we need this spine as part of a new zoning proposal, why the large scale plan. And then just one more question, or two. Does the city intend, what is the formal commitment from the city for the 50 or to the museum? Is there some formal commitment that that you are giving to the museum in this proposal? It doesn't seem to appear in the project description at all, anything about the museum. In fact, I'm just curious what the agreement is. And forgive me if that's already been noted somewhere.
I think
You take that, Adam?
Saul spoke to that during his
Yeah,
during
I think
his remarks.
so.
Saul,
Allison,
do you
what I
wanna
would say is,
elaborate?
I would just say we're working very closely with the city to get them. I know originally, and it was proposed 50 million. Obviously, like I said, the project is decreased by greater than 50%. But our goal and the elected goal is to still try to figure out a way to get them the 50 million that was in the original project, which is double the size. And like I said, we're happy to come back to this community board with the details as soon as the specifics are worked out. That's in the process right now.
Okay, and maybe I get one more, I don't know, 3 minutes.
Yep.
How would the building incorporate resiliency measures and zoning deductions pursuant to the zoning for coastal flood resiliency text amendment? Is the building incorporating any resiliency measures and zoning deductions from that text amendment?
Yeah, Chris, do you want to take that?
Sure, I will make a couple of points there. One is that we are recognizing where we are in terms of the floodplain, which means that we are, from a resiliency point of view, we are protecting the perimeter. And so the cellar, for instance, is dry proofed. The majority of the spaces are dry proofed. And so there is resistance built into the building and in response to the location. Relative to the zoning, we are not currently taking any deductions or benefits from that relationship. But perhaps most importantly is that the building mass, the volume of the building is what it is now. We have an approved building, an improved envelope from LPC. And so we are, even if we do take a deduction of zoning, it doesn't mean that we add it somewhere else. So that would not suggest changes and to the massing from what you saw today and what was approved from LPC. And so the two changes that can come are, one is area additions or height adjustments, and neither of those we would be taking.
Okay, I suspect my time is up. Thanks, Patrick, and thank
Thank
you
you,
all.
Alice. Vicki, you're next. 3 minutes, please. Just keeping in mind we have 8+ more committee members, which you can do the math as to when that becomes the public.
I'm good for the moment. Thank you, Patrick.
Thank you, Vicki. Sitting your time, Rosa Chang.
Hi, thank you. I just want to say that I actually appreciate the location of the community facility space in relation to the new Peck-Slip Park. I thought that was really nice. And I appreciate the varying height of your base. I think you worked really hard to be responsive to the height of and context of the neighboring buildings. And I think that you were very successful in how you dealt with it with your base in terms of the volume. I am extremely concerned about the monolithic and overpowering height and volume of the tower, because I do think that that remains completely out of context, which I'm sure you will probably hear from many more people after me. I also strongly appreciate the inclusion of affordable housing, but looking at your presentation, I am concerned that there is basically a pour door and a separate lobby, which to me reads as a very blatant move to segregate the affordable housing from the market rate housing. And I'm also wondering, does that mean that any building-wide residential amenity spaces are also sort of segregated or separately accessed or, restricted access to the affordable housing community that will be within this building? Because I feel like that goes, frankly, against the spirit of affordable housing to have the segregation between market rate and affordable. I also have a strong concern regarding the schools directly across the street from this project. I mean, separate from the environmental concerns, which we are all aware of. I wonder how you can try to be a good neighbor, given that there are hundreds of children that are going to be trying to learn while they are directly across the street from an active and heavy construction site going on daily outside their window, and this will be for years. Obviously, that is going to impact how they are able to learn. While that may not necessarily be your concern as a private developer, I think that as a neighbor, that should be a concern. And I think that you have set a good precedent for being a good neighbor as relates to other things within the community. And I really do hope that you try to address that, because that's incredibly important to us as a community. The 2 curb cuts on Pearl Street, I'm wondering if there's any way you can reduce them to 1, because number 1, obviously, the curb cuts are dangerous, and I do think a lot of children will be passing by both of them on their way to school, as a lot of the people in the financial district are going towards Peck Slip School. The other thing is also, it seems like a safety issue, even not if you just take children out of the equation, even for your office members. Your office lobby is directly beside one of the curb cuts. So if you could reduce that to 1, I think that would be good for both your building and for the community at large. And I think that is it. I hope I haven't gone over the 3-minute window.
You made it just in time. Thanks. I'll give the applicant team just a moment to respond to any of those points if you wish, or take them and internalize them.
Yeah, I think we'll respond. I'll respond briefly, and these are some issues that we'll also be coming back and discussing as part of the EIS analyses, which take into account construction mitigation and other issues. But those are obviously really important. In terms of the affordable housing, I mean, in the lobby, and the entries, there are two entries into the shared residential lobby, and any resident can access any of those entries. So it's not, I don't think it's the condition that Rosa described or interpreted as, and we can speak to that further as necessary. And amenities will also be able to be accessed by all the building residents. So there won't be that type of segregation. On terms of the curb cuts, I think, it's a good point to consider. Certainly, we're going to operate and manage the building in a safe manner. It's a long block, and we felt like it was important with the loading, to have that off the street. And so and we also felt like that, keeping traffic out of the district and having the parking entry in that zone was important. So, we'll continue to study that, but that was the design approach.
Can I just rebut quick though? Does that mean that the entry that's on Peck Slip that you showed at the CPC meeting is no longer there, and it's exclusively Pearl and water? Because
correct.
At CPC there was essentially a pour door on Peck Slip.
Well, yeah, we didn't view, it wasn't, again, anyone could enter from any entrance, and we had those three entrances, but we have removed it, and so I understand where the confusion came from then. So appreciate that. But yes, we do not have an entry on Peck Slip.
Thanks, Rosa. And that's an important
plan back up if that's helpful, Patrick.
Sure, that is helpful, Chris. That's an important point. I know Vice Chair Knuckles of the Planning Commission raised that issue as well.
Right. So I'll just address this really quickly, because it is different than maybe what others have seen previously, and it's a super important point. Is that we have a through block lobby, and that's what you see in yellow here. And there is an entrance. The primary entrance is on Pearl Street, but also an important and secondary entrance is on Water Street. But it is one lobby with one front desk for all residents.
Okay.
Super appreciate that change. Thank you.
Of course. Thanks.
All right, thanks, Rosa. Moving on to Jason Friedman.
I just had a couple questions. One, and I love some of these new diagrams that I didn't see before, like that first floor diagram that Chris presented that shows how this building is accessed. And I had a question. The first one was, is the parking for like everybody? I'm sorry if that's a stupid question, but can I go and park my, get a monthly spot there? Or is it just for the building? And you only show a cellar there with the uses parking. Are there any other anticipated uses in the cellar? Is there a sub cellar maybe planned? And that's it.
Sure. The parking is primarily for the building. We're still working out the number of spaces and exactly how it'll function in that cellar. But it's an accessory use for the building, and we don't anticipate at this point spaces being available to the public. But if there were, it'd be a very limited number. And then in terms of a subcellar, no, there's no subcellar. And in terms of other uses in the cellar, there's probably some storage and other back of house spaces and limited mechanical, but not the mechanical that needs to be elevated in the building to be resilient for future storm events.
Jason, anything else?
That's it.
Thank you. Moving on, Paul Goldstein.
Thank you. I want to make a few points. This is, as most of you know, but not everyone, this is an issue that's been kicking around for 30, 40 years, literally. There have been prior proposals to build large-scale buildings on this site. Nothing this size has ever been proposed, or, well, they've been proposed but never approved. So, and this community board has been rather consistent in its view that only low-scale buildings that comply with the zoning should go there. And this committee, among others, have passed resolutions, many resolutions on that. Number two, a point has been made that, that we keep getting told that, oh, it's a surface parking lot. Yes, it's a surface parking lot because the approved building for the site that the owner did achieve through landmarks, the owner chose not to build. So it wasn't because the community opposed it. It went through a process. They did gain approval. They chose not to build anything, and they just held it as a parking lot. This community board has a long record of approving and not objecting to tall buildings all over Lower Manhattan, including a block away from the historic district. So that's not really an accurate portrayal of where this community lies. Number three, the fact that there are 8 applications before you should sort of open your eyes. In all my time on the community board, I don't even recall anything approaching 8 applications that the board has to simultaneously review. And that doesn't even take into account some others that are going to be taken up separately, including a 99-year lease and extension for Howard Hughes that would give them further control over much of the operations all over the Seaport. So that should raise some questions as to what's going on. It was this community board that proposed the 2003 rezoning that was supported by every interest group in the community. The museum supported it, all the property owners, Downtown Alliance, unanimous city council. That's the basis for what they're trying to change, everything that's in that. And then finally, let me just mention that transferring air rights to 250 runs completely counter. This is the major item before us. The whole purpose of creating the Air Rights Bank was to move air rights outside the historic district. And that's worked successfully in the past. And certainly this community board even brought to Howard Hughes and other city officials, property owners who were interested in purchasing those air rights so they could be used outside the historic district. Unfortunately, that was never taken up, and here we are today. So I'll just leave it at that. Thank you, Patrick.
Thank you, Paul. Like I'm next on the list, but I'll cede my time. Michael Kettering.
I'll cede my time at the moment, Patrick.
Thank you, Michael. Joel Capel. Joel? Diana, you may be on a dial-in.
Yeah, have him unmuted, so he should be able to speak if he's interested. Yeah, I'll
Joel
cede
Plum.
my time.
Thanks, Joel. Joe Lerner.
I'll pass for now.
Sure. Laura Starr. Laura is possibly in a train tunnel. Okay. Michael Kramer.
Thank you, Patrick. Earlier this afternoon, the Seaport Coalition submitted a new petition with 957 names to Community Board 1 collected in a little over 64 hours this weekend. Signers came from inside and outside the historic district, from Brooklyn, Queens, and Long Island, many supporters in California, New Jersey, Maryland, North Carolina, Ohio, Nebraska, Colorado, Oregon, and even Sweden. The petition read, New York City is at a turning point. We're on the verge of seeing entire neighborhoods controlled by private interests. Enabled by elected officials who have made deals with developers, zoning protections are being dismantled under the ruse of offering benefits for the community. And the frontier is in the South Street Seaport Historic District. The Howard Hughes Corporation, aided by an army of lobbyists, is not only pushing through a building 3 times the allowable height at 250 Water Street, but is now asking for a 99-year lease to supersize the public land it controls in the historic district. If approved, this would set the stage for more zoning busting building in this tiny district. In 2015, the National Historic Trust placed the South Street Seaport Historic District on its endangered list. This prescient action anticipated that Howard Hughes would seek the approvals needed for what it calls monopoly-like control of the seaport. Play off everyone against each other so that you have more avenues of action open to you was a favorite saying of the eccentric billionaire Howard Hughes, whose corporate successor admitted to shareholders that they were using support for the South Street Seaport Museum and affordable housing as political cover for blowing up the zoning in the district. Our Seaport Coalition welcomes any development at 250 Water Street that conforms with the existing zoning and Seaport Working Group guidelines and principles. Our financial plan will save the museum. We support inclusion of true affordable housing within the 120-foot allowable limit at 250 Water and 100% affordable housing on public land at 5 World Trade Center. We want use of public air rights that benefits the public, not billionaire investors like Bill Ackman, the majority owner of Howard Hughes. Their goal is corporate profit at the expense of public interest. Please be advised that none of us are Howard Hughes tenants or engage in commerce as suppliers. However, many of us are longtime South Street Seaport Museum volunteers and supporters. In lieu of reading off the name of each and every petition supporters, our Seaport Coalition reserves the right to submit additional written testimony prior to the July 9th deadline. We oppose the Howard Hughes Corporation plans for 250 Water Street zoning relief actions. Thank you, Patrick.
Thank you, Michael. I want to note for folks as well, if you want to submit testimony on this but aren't comfortable speaking or don't have time, you also may submit written comments. Diana has just dropped the link in the chat. We'll accept those until July 9th, and we look forward to hearing from as many folks from the community as possible. With that, we have gone through all of the committee members, and we're ready to begin the public hearing portion. We have, as of right now, it looks about 60 folks signed up. We're going to go again in the order that you signed up, whether you're for or against. We're not distributing any particular way. First up will be Amelia Josephson. And as we level set here, Amelia, hang on 1 second. I just want to make sure Diana is ready to go as well. Diana,
I'm ready, Patrick.
Okay. Amelia, the floor is yours.
Great, thanks so much. I was not expecting to be first. It's been my pleasure to attend a few of these meetings, both with your committee, the greater CB1, and with Landmarks in support of this project. I work in CB1 and just excited to see this project move forward to add homes and especially affordable homes to the neighborhood. revitalize the site that's currently a parking lot. Just really happy that this project has cleared landmarks and excited to hear more details about the timeline and about the funding for the museum, and when we can, get some families moved into this area, which so many of you are privileged to live in and I'm privileged to work in. Thanks so much for your time.
Thanks, Amelia, and thanks for the brevity. And a fair point about not realizing where you were in the batting order. I'm going to sort of call off 3 names at a time, if I can remember to do that, so that folks will know and be prepared to be on deck. Alex Licio will be next, followed by Nichelle Remfal, then Joanne Gorman, and then Scott Dwyer. Alex, are you able to unmute? If so, Diana will begin your time.
Hey everyone, it's Alex Licio. Can you guys hear me?
We can.
Perfect. Thanks so much. I appreciate it. So my name is Alex Licio, and on behalf of Brookfield Properties, I'm here to provide our enthusiastic support for this very important project. It's our view that the Howard Hughes Corporation's proposed development at 250 Water Street will be an outstanding addition to the Lower Manhattan community via the transformation of a 50-year-old parking lot with no historical significance into a sustainable mixed-use development that will further enhance the historic Seaport district. In addition to dramatically improving the surrounding streetscape, this project will also create thousands of jobs, introduce over 70 affordable apartments, and help facilitate the reopening of the South Street Seaport Museum. Brookfield has a long history of collaborating in New York with SOM, and it's our position that this recalibrated design is both understated and highly appropriate relative to the South Street Seaport Historic District. We really appreciate CB1's consideration and the committee's consideration, and we look forward to welcoming 250 Water Street to the Lower Manhattan community. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Next is Nichelle Ramphal, followed by Joanne Gorman, followed by Scott Dwyer. Nichelle?
Patrick, I don't see them on.
Okay. Joanne Gorman, followed by Scott Dwyer, followed by Edward McWilliams, and then Ankur Dalal. Joanne?
Can you hear me?
I can. Before your time begins, Joanne, speakers, just assume we can hear you unless you hear us struggling to hear you.
Yes,
Okay.
and I as host can unmute anybody from the public to speak.
Yeah. Okay.
Joanne, you're
Okay.
free to go.
I'm Joanne Gorman, and I'm with the Seaport Coalition. The 250 Water Street application and the process around it sends up numerous red flags. To name just a few, regarding the large-scale general development expansion proposed, the current area covers the city-owned Pier 17 and 10 sites and is under an HHC lease with an extension option out to 2072. The Howard Hughes proposal manipulates city zoning to create a greatly enlarged area to further the transfer of city-owned air rights from the waterfront sites to the 250 Water Street lot. It proposes to subsume public open space on city-owned DMAP streets around Fulton Plaza within the new large-scale development boundaries, the sole purpose of which is to advance a developer's private interests. Regarding the 99-year lease extension, Small Business Services is proposing an application that we have yet to be seen to extend the Howard Hughes lease out another 99 years to 2120. It leaves us guessing about the scope of the physical properties involved, as well as the regulatory and financial implications. Both the expanded development and the lease extension are intertwined and would have ramifications far into the future regarding the control over and direction of our precious seaport assets. Asking us to review them separately goes against common sense. As for the transfer of the Seaport unused development rights, we know clearly defined terms and purpose behind the 1972 transfer mechanism. We know next to nothing of the implementation structure of the applicant's proposal, or the city's role in furthering it, or the tie to the museum funding contribution that was used as cover to promote it. Also having direct hearing on the ULUP before us is the environmental impact statement, yet it has barely been addressed at this point. And finally, regarding resiliency, the zoning for coastal flood resiliency text amendment was recently approved. There are concerns regarding the impact of neighboring historic properties of the incorporation of required resiliency measures into Howard Hughes Tower. There are also open questions on what the Lower Manhattan Coastal Resiliency Project will bring to bear on this new waterfront development. And
Joanne, I'm sorry, it looks like we hit the 2-minute mark. I want to just quickly point out with regard to the DEIS and environmental and resiliency issues. The DEIS is going to be reviewed at Community Board 1's Environmental Protection Committee later this month, so please do follow up for that. It's another place to engage on this project. We're going to go to Scott Dwyer, Edward McWilliams, Ankur Dalal, and Catherine McVeigh Hughes. Scott?
Thanks so much. Again, my name is Scott Dwyer. I'm director for Sons of the Revolution in the state of New York, a 501c3 nonprofit organization which maintains Francis Tavern Museum, also in Lower Manhattan. We strongly support the proposal to develop a mixed-use building at 250 Water that, among other things, generates much-needed funding for the South Street Seaport Museum. We believe the proposed 250 Water Street development, after incorporating feedback from the community and the LPC, complements the historic buildings in the Seaport District and will be a welcome and an appropriate addition to that area. Furthermore, the proposed 250 Water building will replace, as it's been discussed, what is currently an unsightly parking lot, thereby enhancing our Lower Manhattan neighborhood for the benefit of all who live, work, and visit here. We urge you to support the land use actions necessary to make this development possible. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Scott. Edward McWilliams, then Ankur Dalal, then Catherine McVeigh Hughes, and Terry Brady. Edward?
Patrick, I don't see Edward on.
Okay. Ankur?
Hi, can you hear me?
We can.
Great. Thank you for the opportunity to speak in favor of this project today. I support this project because it will produce hundreds of new homes to the neighborhood, including many affordable homes. CB1 has actually lost thousands of affordable units this past decade. In 2014, the Southbridge Towers voted to exit the Mitchell-Lama Affordable Housing Program, removing over 1,600 affordable homes from the neighborhood. According to the New York Times article that ran regarding this privatization, the average residents of those buildings paid $17,500 for their homes, and most can expect a 6- or 7-figure profit when they sell. While this is completely legally permissible, buildings rarely leave the Mitchell-Lama program. Less than 10% have. In that same article, residents who opposed the conversion described it as a sad day for affordable housing in Lower Manhattan. Well, today we have an opportunity to begin to correct this wrong. While this building can't support 1,600 new affordable housing, particularly after this committee lobbied the Landmarks Commission to reduce the number of apartments, it's a start. I urge CB1 to do its part to build affordable housing, especially as this neighborhood has removed thousands of affordable units this decade. I also urge CB1 to understand that some of the opponents to this project are simply trying to protect their property values. Leading members of the Seaport Coalition and the Save Our Seaport group own apartments, the views of which would be negatively affected by 250 Water Street. And the board and the president of the board of an adjacent building that's pushing to preserve the lot as is wrote a letter asking residents to oppose this building because it would, quote, decrease property values for units that face the East River. What's particularly troubling is that some of the neighbors who oppose this project live in those newly privatized Mitchell-Lama buildings. When they needed affordable homes, the government helped these folks. Now, some of these folks, though certainly not all, are trying to pull the ladder up behind them in the face of a proposal to create new.
Thank you, Ankur. Looks like the timer got you. Catherine McVeigh Hughes, then we're going to go to Terry Brady, then Kimberly Ann Busey, then Elaine Kennedy. Catherine.
Good evening. My name is Catherine McVeigh Hughes, and I'm a proud member of the South Street Seaport Museum. Since November 1, I've come before the community board twice to testify in support of the South Street Seaport Museum, an institution on the brink of closure. Now, more than 6 months after I first came before you, we have to urgently do something now to keep this institution afloat. The museum is a critical part of the 250 Water Street plan, a rare opportunity that would allow the museum to thrive, keeping dozens of people employed in hiring new historians and art experts downtown, reopening the museum for visitors, preserving thousands of historical artifacts that tell the story of our city's birth and transition into this global economic hub, and helping keep our neighborhood a hub for tourism post-pandemic. This plan to delivering long-lasting economic development and vibrancy for this district. The 250 Water Street site today is an eyesore and a blight on the historic district and poisoned by previous industrial uses. I support the proposal to replace the parking lot with a mixed-use building because it will not only improve our neighborhood, bring jobs and economic activity, as well as restoring affordable housing that we lost when Southbridge Towers was privatized. And it will also assure the long-term survival of the museum and the historic district. I know many of you personally. We worked with you on so many things affecting our community, from revitalizing downtown post 9/11 to helping our neighborhood recover after Superstorm Sandy. I am proud to support the 250 Water Street proposal here because it's plans to save the South Street Seaport Museum, and I hope that you vote in favor and that we can harness that same spirit of collaboration today as we did before to save the South Street Seaport Museum. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Catherine. Always a master of the 2-minute mark. Thank you. Terry Brady, then we're going to go to Kimberly Ann Busey, Elaine Kennedy, and Nicholas O. Terry?
Thank you for the opportunity to address this community board. In full support of the Howard Hughes Corporation's proposal for redevelopment of 250 Water. The proposal to transform a rundown parking lot into a multi-use structure will provide numerous benefits to the historic Seaport District and its community members. This comprehensive approach will provide an economic boost not only to the Seaport, but to the entire city hit hard by the COVID pandemic. The project's inclusion of affordable housing, increased retail capacity, and tax benefits, as well as the additional funding to support the Seaport Museum and its district, is a win-win for the immediate community and for the city itself. During the landmark approval phase, the community provided valuable input, voiced their support for this project, and the Howard Hughes Corporation listened. Changes were made to improve the building's design and its compatibility with the historic district. It was a refreshing example of the cooperation among all parties involved. Now it is time for the next step in the continued revitalization of the Seaport. For the past few years, I've been fortunate enough to work at the district and have witnessed consistent improvements spearheaded by the Howard Hughes Corporation. This is another step forward in the regeneration of the Seaport District that is critical to the preservation of New York's amazing historical journey, something we cannot afford to overlook. The 250 Water project will be a key component in the continued revitalization of the community and will help preserve the amazing history of this iconic section of New York for now and for future generations. Again, I fully support the 250 Water project and urge you to consider its immediate impact and the long-term positive benefits it affords. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you, Terry. Next is Kimberly Ann Busey, and Elaine Kennedy, Nicholas O. to follow.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can.
Thank you very much. My name is Kim Busey. I've lived and worked in the Seaport area for over 20 years, and I've experienced many ups and downs, as many of you have, during those 20 years. I've chosen to raise my children here, particularly because of the responsible development that created public schools, beautiful outdoor spaces, and safe streets. I love this area, and I am speaking shortly and briefly and also very simply to say that I believe emphatically that it is important to allow this type of development to go through, and this project in particular, as I've spoken at many meetings. This has been a very difficult, not only 10 years, as some of the other speakers have said, but these last 2 years, it saddens me and it worries me that I see so many businesses with that have storefronts that have been destroyed because of this pandemic. And I cannot think of a better way to revitalize this neighborhood, to create safe spaces for future families and future businesses. Thank you.
Thanks, Kimberly. Next up is Elaine Kennedy, followed by Nicholas O., followed by Roland Lewis, and then Emily Hellstrom. Elaine?
Okay, am I unmuted? Can you hear me?
You're good to go.
Okay, thank you. I'm Elaine Kennedy. I'm a resident of Southbridge Towers. I've been here for 45 years. I've watched the evolution and of the Seaport through many incarnations. Southbridge Tower objects to the development of a 390, well, we changed it back to the 323 stories on a building on the 250 Water Street lot, which is zoned for 120 feet of development. LPC approved the 323 feet, including the mechanical penthouse and resiliency. A reminder that Southbridge is only 270 feet, including mechanical penthouses. We approached the large-scale development expansion through the DMAP street bed of Fulton, Water, and Front Streets, and the 250 Water Street, forming the spine necessary to link the Pier 17 to 250 for the transfer of the development rights, air development rights. We oppose this erosion through the core of the historic district of public assets turning over to a private developer. We oppose the zoning text amendment to modify the definition of receiving lot to include 250 Water Street. We oppose the transfer of development rights anywhere within the historic district. We oppose the 99-year extension of the lease, and we ask for recognition of the 957 signatures on our petition. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Elaine. We're going to go to Nicholas O., then Roland Lewis, Emily Hellstrom, and then Rob Becker. Nicholas?
Hello, my name is Nicholas Wu. I support this project. Every neighborhood in New York City has a responsibility to have affordable housing. And this would be the first affordable housing built in this neighborhood under the MIH program. And this is the opportunity to make that, to create that affordable housing. I like the designs as it is, and I really regret this has already been made smaller by LPC. I don't think this should be any smaller. We really need those affordable homes. This proposal is good and far better than the existing parking lot or the tow pound proposal, and is the only realistic option on the table to produce housing and affordable housing. It's a win-win for everybody. Affordable housing, new neighbors who will now be able to move here because there's more housing and affordable housing, new jobs created, and the museum getting financial support. I know some people don't like this project or really any new building because they like their views and the high property values for $1 million homes. But to be honest, I don't think these concerns should overcome our duty to create more housing and more affordable housing, both of which are direly needed. And, really to keep it real, someone is going to make money on this no matter what. Either we build more housing and affordable housing to house people and the developers will make some money, or really like the $1 million homeowners make money as they increase their property values by continue to engineer a shortage and deprive everyone else of direly needed housing and, for what? A parking lot? So, I think we should keep it real and say like, this is a good option, a realistic option on the table. And I think we should take it. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicholas, and apologies for butchering your last name. Roland Lewis, followed by Emily Hellstrom, followed by Rob Becker, and then Mark Bosek.
Good evening, Community Board and Patrick. This is Roland Lewis, former president of the Waterfront Alliance, speaking as a private citizen, but a private citizen that for 10 years looked out on 243 Water Street and 217 Water Street from my office at that parking lot, far too long. I strongly support the new development that Howard Hughes is proposing for 250 Water Street. I think the community boards and citizens' voices were heard. The design is improved, and I think it'll be a great benefit for the district, great benefit especially for the museum, which desperately needs funding, and great for the city, which will need development as we go through a very tough period in the near future. I should say, is to give myself a little bit of street cred here, as many on the board might know, when I was the head of the Waterfront Alliance, along with others, fought the Howard Hughes development at the New Market site. We thought that was a bad project, but this is a different development and a different situation, and I strongly support this one. And finally, another hat I used to wear was the head of Habitat for Humanity for New York City, and therefore I recommend the inclusion of affordable housing in this project, and what's, as many other folks have noted, desperately needed in Community Board 1 and elsewhere in the city. So again, support the project and hope the Community Board 1 will do the same. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Roland. Nice to hear from you again. Emily Hellstrom, then Rob Becker, Mark Bozick, then Warren Green. Emily.
Hi, thanks so much, Patrick, and thank you so much, Community Board 1, who has a lot to deal with this year. As I listen to the presentation tonight, I cannot help but think of my children. In my house, we have set rules on how we are meant to all live together in our house. But my children don't like the rules, and they're constantly trying to get around them. And when we set very firm rules around something that we find very important, a lot of times they work even harder at giving reasons why they should get exceptions and that they don't agree with the rules. And sometimes they even use tricks to avoid completely complying with the rules. What we have here is a 10 bullet point set of tricks to try to get around very important community rules. We as a community have deemed the historic district so important as to not only have a law about it called the Landmark Preservation Law, but in 2003, our community went out of their way, you Community Board 1, to add even further protections by passing zoning to specifically avoid a tall building on this lot. I would point out that Saul waxed eloquently about how important the Howard Hughes Corporation finds the historic district, and yet they have consistently let the district down and the community down. Witness the promised but non-existent open public park on top of Pier 17, the essentially non-existent 10,000 square foot market, and the already privatized public spaces within the district. The list goes on. I would point out that not one of the community benefits in this project is clearly locked in. Saul says, I'm sure we'll come to an agreement. The money to the Seaport Museum, the affordable housing, they are moving targets. And ULURPs are notorious for having community benefits slip away, and there is nothing that we can do about it. Look at NYU, 100,000 square foot school, gone. Affordable housing in Community Board 2 that became a Google office building. The Water Street arcades, uniformed guards to enter public spaces, time and time again through the sleight of hand, and the public loses. Alice Blank is prescient when she points to the DMAC streets. Paul Goldstein.
Thanks, Emily. Rob Becker is next, followed by Mark Bozick, followed by Warren Green, and then Philip Santini. Rob?
Yes. Hello, my name is Rob Becker. I work in Lower Manhattan for the Durst organization. My responsibilities include the management of One World Trade Center's commercial operations and the commercial activities for our 9 historic buildings, which we call Historic Front Street, which consists of 95 residential units and 13 retail locations located between Peck Slip and Beekman Street. I'm also a resident of Front Street for the last 10 years. I'm speaking on behalf of myself and the Durst organization, and we strongly support the development of the 250 Water Street project and the South Street Seaport Museum proposals. I know I speak for myself, my neighbors, residents, and commercial tenants when I say the parking lot on 250 Water Street is not historic or worthy of preservation. It is an unsightly gap in the street wall experienced negatively by all who enter this neighborhood. The new 250 Water Street building is appropriate to its context. Its low-rise podium draws the design elements found in the historic district, and the setback towers, having minimal impact on the views within the historic district, are attractive and fitting for the area, especially when you consider the much taller buildings across the street. This is a special neighborhood that needs a welcoming point of entry, and this proposal provides an elegant solution. The Seaport was historically a place where the maritime industry and small businesses thrived. In my job, I work every day with commercial tenants and retailers in Lower Manhattan. These businesses are now desperate and struggling. This development will help. In addition to that, the development will strengthen the businesses, and it encourages access to the waterfront and all of the commercial and cultural offerings that define the Seaport today, including, and equally and most important, the South Seaport Museum with its world-class exhibition space. In conclusion, this is a thoughtful, appropriate, and respectful project. It's in the right place, the right time, and we encourage you to approve it.
Thank you, Rob. We're going to go to Mark Bozick, Warren Green, Philip Santini, and someone named Paul Hovitz. Mark, go ahead.
Thank you for allowing me to speak this evening.
last week was the first time since February 2020 I had been to Manhattan driving from Long Island via the RFK Bridge versus taking a train to Penn Station and the subway directly to the Fulton Street subway and the few blocks walk to the Seaport district, as I've done since our collaborating with the Seaport to create a thriving and productive neighborhood with my new company, Live Rocket. I was excited to see for the first time throughout Manhattan signs of life, both commercial and residential. My friends and colleagues, some of which have rarely left Manhattan during the pandemic, are most excited about the new New York that is upon us. I've come to love the Seaport District in the last 2 years I have visited there and cannot wait to launch our new company there, as opposed to the many potential locations that were offered to us on the West Side and other parts of Manhattan. I was graciously allowed to show my documentary about New York Times legendary photographer Bill Cunningham on the rooftop of Pier 17 last August, which is owned, of course, and operated by the Howard Hughes Corporation. That night, Bill Cunningham spoke of his love on a gigantic screen and discovery of all new things in his favorite city. The backdrop was the amazing Brooklyn Bridge on a perfect New York City evening with helicopters and boats going about their business. It was that night that I knew we had found our new home for Live Rocket. Last week, mindful of tonight's meeting, I walked past the tired and sad parking lot at 250 Water Street, and it occurred to me how out of place it was amongst a few blocks away was the investment of millions and millions of dollars worth of beauty and community. As someone who has loved our city since I arrived in 1977 at the age of 17, I cannot help but note that there is most definitely a BC and an AC before COVID and after COVID, and it must please be recognized. What has happened worldwide cannot be denied, nor can the process under which all these New York City committees go forward in a business as usual scenario. There are few, if any, New Yorkers alive that have experienced what our city has in the past year and a half, or our world has. To go forward worrying about curbs and loss of sunlight is a mistake. The incredible effort the Howard Hughes Corporation has made since they first became involved in the Seaport District has been consistent and wildly supportive of the community. The opposition is, respectfully, so last year.
Patrick, you're muted.
It's going to happen one way or another. Thank you, Mark. We're going to go to Warren Green, Philip Santini, Paul Hovitz, then Edwin Schlossberg. Warren, are you with us?
I don't see Warren and I don't see Philip, so next would be Paul Hovitz.
Yes, Mr. Hovitz.
Thank you, Mr. Cannell. My name is Paul Hovitz. I'm a past vice chair of Community Board 1 and too many other boards to my wife's dismay. I want to thank the members of the both public and appointed as CB1. I understand the work and the sacrifice. Save Our Seaport began as Save Our Seaport Museum. South Street Seaport Museum is the linchpin of the Seaport Historic District. Casting it by the wayside flies in the face of Save Our Seaport. I was on the Southbridge Board of Directors when we initiated the effort to downzone 250 Water Street to stop Milstein from building a 23-story edifice on the lot. 250 Water was never in the historic district. We included it as a ploy to ensure the downzoning. For over 10 years, there have been efforts to help fund the museum that failed. The city has said that it has given the Seaport Museum more than it gave any other such institution and cannot continue to do so alone, and it is done. Howard Hughes has propped up the museum for the last 4 years to help keep it open at over $250,000 annually. We have been after the city to allow historic air rights to be applied outside the historic district, as was brought up by a board member. For over 2 years, the city has refused, stating not wishing to establish a precedent. Newcomers, along with well-intentioned old-timers, have suggested that already tried and failed plans to save the museum be reinstituted. Some of those old-timers said the museum is not an important part and should be allowed to die. Shame on them. We shall have a 160-foot development as of right. Zoning allows 120 feet and
All right, Paul, we hit the 2-minute mark. Next up will be Edwin Schlossberg, followed by Christina Rockos, followed by Richard Dykema, followed by Megan Malvern. Edwin?
Can you hear me?
We certainly can.
Great. I'm so pleased to be here today to recommend that this project be congratulated for the steadfastness of designing it several times, listening to criticism, and finally coming up with a design which is both rational and beautiful and interesting and effective. And as a lifetime New Yorker, that doesn't often happen. And I'm as a designer who has loved coming to the South Street Seaport, I look forward to how the future of this project will go forward, and I most heartily encourage it to be approved. Thank you.
Thank you, Edwin. We're going to go to a young lady named Christina Rockos, followed by Richard Dykema, followed by Megan Malvern, and then Daniel DeVecchio.
Patrick, I think Christina's on the phone. It's going to take me 1 second to figure out which line to unmute. So can we go to Richard next and then circle back to Christina?
Sure, Richard Dykema, and then back to Tina.
The Civic Center Seaport area.
Richard, are you with us?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Right, we can, yeah. Sorry, we sort of threw you out of order, so thanks for bearing with us.
Okay, anyway.
You have the floor, sir.
My name is Richard Dykema. I'm a resident of the Civic Center Seaport area. I haven't been involved with these issues that long, but I can see that this proposal is a very good one. We need more housing in this city. This area needs to be part of that, and the Seaport and the businesses need the support of more residents in the area. So I certainly hope that the Community Board 1 will recommend the approval of this project to the City Council.
Thank you, Richard. Thanks for the brevity. Diana, have we located Christina?
Give me 1 moment.
Just to give the on deck, we're going to go. Hang on.
All
Tina,
right, we've got her.
Tina, hold on 1
Hi,
second. Then we're going to go Megan Malvern, then Daniel DeVecchio, then Joshua Pickard. Christina, you have the floor.
Okay, thanks. My name is Christina Rockos, and I'm a long-standing member of the downtown community. I've been down here for, close to 13 years now. I strongly support the 250 Water Street project proposed by the Howard Hughes Corporation. It's perfectly understandable that some of our neighbors closest to the site object to the prospect of years of construction noise. And sure, some of them will have their views and light diminished. People are concerned about their property values. This is the tale of New York City, but this is most certainly not a reason for the land use, zoning, and economic development community to reject the proposal. It would seem to me that this is not only an appropriate use of the land and area, but that it will enhance, not detract from the overall community. Howard Hughes proposes to make a drab and crumbling parking lot into a vibrant, bustling residential and retail site. On the edge of the historic district, well suited among nearby tall towers, the buildings would serve as a magnet to the suffering Seaport, whether or not you look at the parking lot as a transition site or not. It is inevitable that the entirety of the Seaport Historic District would benefit from the increased foot traffic and energy this exciting project would bring. I'm sure you're all aware of the sad story from a couple of months ago, a girl losing her life in the abandoned fish market building. The reality right now is one of a neighborhood on the brink of more crime and desolation. We need to inject investment into the area and should count ourselves as extraordinarily lucky that we have an enthusiastic corporation willing to partner up on the vision, the better future for all Seaport businesses, schools, and the families who live here. Thank you all.
Thanks, Christina. We're going to go to Megan Malvern, Danielle DeVecchio, then Joshua Pickard, and then we're going to come back to Edward Williams. We've managed to locate.
Hello?
Megan,
Yeah.
floor is yours.
Oh, hey. Hey, this is Megan Malvern. I'm a 15-year resident and my kids go to Peck Slip. There are a few bullet points I'd like to talk to the community board about. Today, a complaint was filed with New York Attorney General Letitia James' office and the State Board of Elections against Howard Hughes Corporation to review the likely illegal use of voter registration for non-election purposes. The Civil Rights Bureau of the Office of the Attorney General will be reviewing and investigating the matter. According to McKinney's election law, information contained within statewide voter registration lists shall not be used for non-election purposes. Over the past many months, HHC has sent out emails eliciting clickbait forms about the 250 Water Street project. The sign-off from Saul states, "You are receiving this email because you are a registered voter in Lower Manhattan." Onto the FOIL requests. The Seaport Coalition has outstanding requests, some over a year old, to various city agencies, including the mayor's office, city planning, landmarks preservation. Purposeful or not, we are not getting information we requested that has bearing on what we are being asked to review. The application should not be considered until it reflects what LPC approved. It was green-lighted more than 5 weeks ago. There is no reason to look at an inaccurate and incomplete application that will further confusion about what is being proposed and what was proposed. CB1 should not consider an agreement that has no concrete obligation or language for what the South Street Seaport will be given and when, how much money. I'd also like to keep it real, Nicholas. These apartments are not official MIH. Do your homework. And I hope you'll be joining to working with the Community Board 1 and getting 100% affordable housing at World Trade Center 5. Over and over again, it's stated falsely that this is the first affordable housing in the neighborhood. There are 120 new affordable units and deeply affordable units on Fulton Street, right at the cross streets of Cliff and Dutch. Finally, the public review process. Virtual meetings, while useful in many instances, cannot replace in-person meetings for true public engagement. The online ability to exercise control over who can be seen and who cannot be heard, along with technical issues, limits true participation for the general public. I strongly oppose all of this shenanigans from 250 and from Howard Hughes.
Okay. Daniel Delvecchio, Joshua Pickard, and then Edward McWilliams, and then Alan Millman.
Can you hear me?
Ken.
It's Daniel Delvecchio, and I would like to say that I strongly support the proposal from Howard Hughes Corporation for the mixed-use building at 250 Water Street. Not only is it going to create the affordable housing that's such a need down there, but also Seaport Museum and getting the funding to use that. I think it's something I support wholeheartedly. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Joshua Pickard, then Williams, Alan Millman, then Carolyn Miller.
Can you hear me? Hi. Good evening. My name is Joshua Pickard. I'm a partner in Noah Hospitality Group, which operates 8 restaurants in downtown New York. I'm speaking today in support of 250 Water Street on behalf of myself and my partners Luke Ostrom and Andrew Carmelini, along with our other key team members who are all invested in the Seaport District for what is becoming today, by maintaining and evolving into a wonderful balance between its history and the future. I've lived in downtown New York since 1981 and know the Seaport quite well over the years. I'm a founding board member that created the NoHo bid, so I understand the development process in such cherished neighborhoods. I was happy to see the modifications made during the landmark approval process and now feel confident this development will be an important addition to the Seaport District and has been carefully scaled to the existing historical structures and is inclusive to the community needs. The new housing, affordable housing in the district and the mixed use being proposed at 250 Water Street will bring a well-needed local customer base for our small businesses. The importance of regulars in our business needed to survive and help the neighborhood thrive in a year-round scenario and be a welcome addition to the existing tourism. The renovation, reopening, and eventual expansion of the South Street Museum will also bring new visitors and diners, which local proprietors will appreciate and support enthusiastically. This is an example, I believe, of good planning and appropriate design coming together when we need it most. I thank you, and I ask that you approve this proposal.
Thank you, Joshua. We're going to go to we're going to go to Edward Pickard, then Alan Millman, then Carolyn Miller, then Courtney Worrell.
Patrick, do you mean Ed McWilliams?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Am I muted? Good
Go
afternoon. My name is Ed McWilliams. I'm the Executive Director with the New York City District Council of Carpenters, an organization of 20,000 construction workers in the New York City construction industry. We also speak tonight. I would like to echo our support for 250 Water Street, that it's a bold and forward-thinking project. We've worked with the Howard Hughes Corporation many times, and I would commend them. They have gone to great lengths to address the issues and concerns of so many residents and stakeholders in the South Street Seaport community. In addition to the project helping to make New York City a desired destination for tourism, are the additional $50 million in improvements to the South Street Seaport Museum, which has been shuttered since Superstorm Sandy. It's unbelievable. The extra space will further reduce overcrowding, keep people out of harm's way. We believe that there's never been a better and more important time to breathe new life into the South Street Seaport community. Added enhancements to the Peck Slip Plate Street, and preservation of the cobblestone streets, which are characteristic to the community, are excellent. Additionally, the 250 Water Street project is going to provide affordable housing. It's going to function as a catalyst to jumpstart our economy. It's just a great project. It completes and reinforces the historic district. The building will fill a yawning gap in the historic district, reinforcing its boundaries, inviting pedestrians into the historic district on the activated streets that lead to the core of the district. So we support, and we urge the community board to support the development of 250 South Street. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Ed. We're going to go to Alan Millman, Carolyn Miller, Courtney Morale, and Ann Beaumont.
Hi, Patrick. This is Alan Millman. I bet you can hear me.
We certainly can.
To begin with, I've never heard so many people that seem to be against business and against profit. I mean, since prehistoric times, investment has been the foundation for economic growth. And if this city needs anything right now, it needs economic growth. Like Saul mentioned when he opened up today's meeting, I spent a lot of time at the Seaport as a young man, and quite frankly, I thought it was one of the best destinations in the city of New York. I've worked domestically and internationally in hospitality, entertainment, and food beverage industries, and I must say the South Street Seaport can compete with a lot of destinations around the world, not to mention, Nice, Monte Carlo, Bellevue, places like that. But it does offer people a tremendous opportunity to get out to the water, and at the same time, am I losing you? Are you losing me? Hello?
We still have you.
Hello, am I still on?
You are, we can hear you.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
No.
In any event, I think Mr. Ackerman has earned his money, and he shouldn't be considered a vagrant or anything for trying to reinvest it. We have a great opportunity here while a lot of people are running out of New York. The Howard Hughes Company is doubling down on its investments here. And the fact that they're looking to expand their leases is only to reinsure that there will be enough money to go around. As far as the museum goes, over the last year that I've been attending these meetings, I hear about all these local people who are going to take care of the funding. In the meantime, we have no funding. But Ackman and Saul and the Howard Hughes Company has come a long way to help underwrite the museum, enhance the district, and make it an ongoing opportunity for New York City. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alan. Carolyn Miller, Courtney Worrell, Ann Beaumont, and then Adrian Sisson.
Hi, my name is Caroline Miller. I'm a resident of the Seaport area and a member of the Seaport Coalition. Let me start by saying that I do not have a view that will be ruined by the building proposed for 250 Water Street. Although the Howard Hughes Corporation would like everyone to believe that the opposition to this project is based on self-interest, there are in fact many people who want to see historic districts in this city protected from high-rise development that depends on busting zoning high limits and the transfer of public air rights inside historic districts. There are many people who don't want to see the entire island of Manhattan turned into a homogeneous mass of luxury residential and office towers. Despite the glut of these luxury apartments and offices all over the city, this is sold to the city officials by dangling a few affordable apartments on the lower floors. In this case, of course, HHC has also been dangling money for the Seaport Museum, even though the amount is declining before our eyes, as promises of public amenities tend to do. And it's questionable whether this money for the museum is even legally attached to the 250 Water Street project. Now we learn that in order to accomplish this air rights sleight of hand, the Hughes Corporation is asking to add several of the main streets in the Seaport to the area it controls, to annex parts of Fulton Front and Water Streets to connect Pier 17 to 250 Water Street in some kind of vague spine. I oppose the transfer of air rights to this non-receiving lot and to granting control of those DMAP streets in the Seaport to HHC. This is a wrong-headed project that would, in essence, be using a city-created air rights and public streets to solidify HHC's control over this area in a strategy the company likes to call monopoly control of a community it's developing. It would effectively remove 10% from this already tiny, low-rise historic district, which, trust me, is not the site of any of New York's more expensive homes. And it would lay the groundwork for the Hughes Corporation and or someone else to find the next vulnerable, underutilized lot in this or some other historic district.
Thank you, Caroline. Courtney Worrell, then Ann Beaumont, then Adrian Sosin, then Melanie Walker.
Thanks. My name is Courtney Worrell. I'm the president and CEO of the Waterfront Alliance. We're an advocacy organization focused on resilient and revitalized waterfronts across the region. We strongly support this proposal to provide a mixed-use building at 250 Water Street. We'll create affordable housing in the Seaport District, create much needed funding for the Seaport Museum through the sale of air rights. It's important to recognize the LPC found this appropriate. If this project is not approved, the result will be a mix of market rate residential and commercial uses that will not be able to provide affordable housing support for the Seaport Museum and other community benefits. The project has received widespread political support, is supported by leading urban planners, housing advocates, community partners, and is endorsed by the New York Times, the New York Daily News, and the New York Post. So a parking lot across from Waterfront Alliance's office is a lot that our staff has used at times and depended on. However, many of us who work and live in the Seaport have long felt the parking lot is a glaring eyesore and that the time is long past for the site to be reimagined. The project will provide badly needed funds to the South Street Seaport Museum. The museum will be able to receive sustainable funding as well as a new resilient building in order to operate as a world-class institution. And the plan will allow the museum its first ever reliable recurring income stream that it will put it on sound footing, especially after the impact of the pandemic. We strongly feel that the Seaport Museum is an extremely important part of New York City's past and future, and the museum is at a crossroads. It interprets the history of the city through its entry point, the New York Harbor Estuary. This is a complex history, and there's no other place in New York City where this can be interpreted in the same way. We believe this is the right project at the right time for the Seaport, for Lower Manhattan, and for New York City. We urge this body to support the land use actions necessary to make this development possible. Thank you.
Thanks, Ann. I'm sorry, Courtney. Ann Beaumont is next, then Adrian Sosin, then Melanie Walker, then Linda Hallstrom.
Hello, my name is Ann Beaumont, and since 2010, I've lived at the Bindery on Pearl Street. In addition to being a homeowner at the Seaport since 2006, I have volunteered at the South Street Seaport Museum, and I am an enthusiastic supporter of the museum. Save Our Seaport was founded in my living room. I am here to testify in support of the proposal. It is necessary to our neighborhood and to the museum and the city more generally. I'm going to focus on the benefits to the museum because that's what my attachment is to this neighborhood. In addition to its iconic ships, the museum cares for tens of thousands of artifacts and preserves some of the oldest buildings in our city, including Schermerhorn Row, the original World Trade Center of New York City. Its work is hard, expensive, and essential to connect New Yorkers and visitors to the city, to the visitors to the city, to the birthplace of our city and our nation. The investment in the museum from this proposal is a needed lifeline from which the South Street Seaport Museum can plan for the future. We have a stark choice to make right now, and I believe the right choice is obvious. We can build a building that is available to be built now at 250 Water and in turn save the cultural anchor of our neighborhood, the museum. Or we can continue to dream about and hope for an alternative which may never come, leave the parking lot in place, its toxic soil unremediated for years and likely decades to come, and lose forever the core of this neighborhood's identity and one of New York's iconic landmarks, that is the museum. Those are the options. There is no viable alternative anywhere in sight, and I hope you will stand with me in supporting our neighborhood, our city, and this beloved museum in its time of need. Thank you.
Thanks, Ann. Adrian is next, followed by Melanie Walker, Linda Hellstrom, then Tom Burton.
Hello.
Hi, Adrian.
Hi, thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Adrian Andy Sosin. In addition to my previous statements at CB1 and at the Landmarks Preservation Commission against this tower in terms of historic preservation, I now focus on the many adverse quality of life and environmental factors, plus the infuriating fact that HHC's complex ULURP strategy is unmasked as a scheme to make public spaces private. This overly tall building will forever adversely affect the Seaport. It will also be an environmental minus in the floodplain, endangering its neighbors, causing harm to local residents and school children during construction, blocking views of the city from many vantage points, and unfairly taking away the general public's light and air. All along, the Howard Hughes Corporation, Seaport District LLC, has been an unfaithful actor in their leasing and management of the Seaport concessions, as well as keeping the South Street Seaport Museum a beggar institution. I hope you will consider the domino effects on the Seaport and throughout the city of breaking zoning precedent at 250 Water Street and the torturous path that is being used to transfer air rights so that HHC can sell oligarchs billion-dollar views of the Brooklyn Bridge and demapped streets, creating an even greater private control over public property. Air rights and upzoning is the EDC's way of making profit on behalf of the city, but this benefits owners of property and puts everyone else into the shade. We will literally be living in the shadows. Even without our requested foils, it is evident that the Howard Hughes Corporation, like other developers and big real estate interests, along with the collaboration of the EDC, is intent on carving out a geographic sphere of influence in a specific area of New York City, the Seaport District. Being beholden to a single monopolizing corporation is not a positive influence on the city's livability.
Okay. Thank you, Adrian. I'm going to go to Melanie Walker, then Linda Hellstrom, Tom Burton, then Stacy Shubb.
Hello, good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Melanie, we can, Melanie.
Thank you for pronouncing my name right, by the way, as well. Thank you. Just wanted to, I appreciate it. Just wanted to briefly say that I am in full support of the proposal. I am backing Howard Hughes Corporation. And I'm thanking Skidmore, Owings & Merrill for their beautiful work that they have done so far on this proposal. I believe that the South Street Seaport is in need of a breath of fresh air in the community. I've worked on Cliff Street for a numerous amount of years. I am an architectural librarian for a few years as well, and have worked on many projects, and I'm deeply in support of this, and I'm looking forward to the outcome. And once again, you all have my support. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Melanie. Linda Hellstrom, then Tom Burton, Stacy Shubb, then Lisa Wong, please. Linda?
I'm Linda
Dahlstrom at 273 Water Street. I need to make one comment first about the affordable housing. I emphasize that this is not MIH affordable housing that Howard Hughes is proposing. When HHC flips this building, as they have indicated they will do in their corporate documents, there is no guarantee whatsoever that the affordable housing would likely transfer to the new developer, nor would the community space, tiny as it is. Next, a bit of housekeeping. FOIL requests. The Seaport Coalition has outstanding requests, some over a year old, to various city agencies, including the mayor's office, city planning, landmarks preservation. Purposeful or not, we are not getting information we requested that has bearing on what we have been asked to review. Second, the public process has been subverted from the very first days of HHC's public input workshops. They tightly controlled who would attend, then they asked the public what they wanted at 250 Water Street by giving choices to pick from that didn't even include what they could legally build under the 120-foot zoning. Now HHC is using our air rights, demapping our public streets, using our public space on Pier 17 for areas of private access only, giving them control over more public space feeds into their corporate motto, quote, "We control cities, don't let them control ours." And last, every time you walk by the Fulton Market building, take a look and realize that if precedent is set by using the air rights within the historic district at 250 Water, that empty building is next. With a high rise there and 2 or more other places, there will no longer be a tourist destination. Historic districts are good for tourism and business. Don't kill the goose that laid the golden egg. Thank you.
Thanks, Linda. Before we move on, I just want to give folks sort of a placeholder on where we are. We have about 64 folks signed up in total. And if you're a member of the applicant team or a member of the committee who signed in, you'll notice I've skipped through you, so that number is actually less. With Linda, we're at about number 37. So we are making our way through. Thank the members of the public for your brevity and for keeping this really on the civil and keeping order and decorum. So with that, we're going to go to Tom Burton, Stacy Shub, Lisa Wong, and Shara Datta. Tom. All right, Tom, we'll come back to you for. Hey there. Tom Burton?
Yes. Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, great. Okay. Thanks for having me speak. I've lived in the Seaport for the last 28 years with my wife and our 3 young children, and our kids attend Peck Slip School, very proximate to 250 Water Street. And I own a company called Manhattan by Sail, and we operate 2 historic sailing vessels out of Lower Manhattan. We were tenants of General Growth, and we are looking to return to the Seaport to Pier 17, so full disclosure. And I wanted to let you know that I am absolutely in support of this project because I think it's the only way I can see that we can support the museum. I've been involved with the museum as a resident, as a business owner, and a community board member for the last 20 years. And I think that New York City is losing its history as a maritime city, and the working waterfront is disappearing, as are the locations where historic ships can operate both overnight and maintain themselves. South Street Seaport Museum is one of the last places in New York City where locals and visitors can learn about New York City's maritime. And so I think the museum needs sustainable, ongoing funding to secure its future. And there is no viable option at this time other than the proposal that you are seeing in front of you. I encourage everyone to please stop opposing it directly to the whole project, but instead try to maybe figure out important points that would matter very, very much, such as that have been raised, maybe promises about the affordable housing, getting some teeth and some sort of ways of ensuring that the
All right, Tom, timer got you. We're going to go Stacy Shub, Lisa Wong, Sharav Dada, and then Neil Flaherty. Stacy?
Thank you, Patrick. So, having lived at the South Street Seaport for over 25 years, for the record, counter to Yimby's unethical doxing of me and others on Twitter, my view will be the same at 7 stories or 37. The value of my apartment is likely to go up with all the new retail and restaurants, the elimination of that disgusting blight on the neighborhood, that surface parking lot. So I probably stand to personally gain. You might ask, why then am I opposed to something that would likely put money in my pocket? First, I'm actually more concerned that the increase in property values will harm the elderly who live in the area and might be actually displaced by this. But if you really want to know why am I opposed, if you have not yet read HHC's own investor deck, Controlling Cities and Creating Monopolies, you'll get a better insight into their true intentions. And let's be honest, if Ackman really wanted to save the museum, he could skip a vacation or maybe lunch and write a check. But the museum and the affordable housing is really just the cost of doing business for them. Speaking of affordable housing, if past is prologue, as Shakespeare has said, then I'm scared. If you look at Hawaii, where they were faced with a very similar need for approvals, what they did was promise, and I said promise, the necessary affordable or reserved housing. But what happened was within 6 months of opening, the fees for them went up by over 50%. Many of those people who had affordable units either had to get second jobs or declare bankruptcy. You don't believe me? Google it. The other thing that I wanted to call out is thank you for actually showing that there's a loading dock, because in previous versions you showed a red, I think, sports car with
All right. Sorry, Stacy, hit you 2 minutes. Lisa Wong, then Sharav Dada, Neil Flaherty, then Ernest Tullerson. Lisa?
Yes, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Hi, thank you, CB1. I'm Lisa Wong, and I live in Lower Manhattan now for 15 years. And I've been doing residential real estate for 24 years, doing a lot down here, actually. I fell in love with this area many years ago, and the history and the intrigue and just the beginning of New York, beginning of the country. My son is a senior at Millennium High School, and I'm co-president of the Parent Association for 3 years now. And my son also sits on 2 CB1 committees, the only student. As 200 Chambers and 101 Warren became for Tribeca, I really feel that 250 Water Street could become a wonderful new nexus for this neighborhood. It will bring a vibrant energy and will invigorate local businesses, restaurants, shops with the influx of new residents, new workers, and new commerce. I think Howard Hughes has been thoughtful and collaborative through this process, and has been a community asset and a great community neighbor. They've done a lot for, I know, Millennium. And I think it should be understood that any plan for this site has to be of scale to be viable, to be successful. So I think that often gets lost in the context. People not liking what they see, but if something has to be built, it has to be successful. And if they're collaborating with the community, as they have been, I think I can't see a better match. And then also, who else would support our beloved South Street Seaport Museum otherwise? Like, who is going to do that? And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. We're going to go to Shora Dada, Neil Flaherty, Ernest Tullerson, and Brendan Sexton. Shora?
Yes, hi, good evening. My name is Sharaf Datta. I'm speaking on my own behalf.
I'm here today because I've been working in Community Board District 1 since 2009 in Battery Park, Wall Street, and now across from the Fulton Center. I was also a former resident of CB1 who had to leave Lower Manhattan a few years ago to seek cheaper rent elsewhere. I'm a public servant and have now been lucky to find a home in rent-stabilized mixed-income rental housing. And while this proposal alone isn't going to solve New York's housing crisis, I say that every little bit more we can do to create more housing stability in downtown Manhattan helps, especially for newer New Yorkers like myself, a first-generation Asian American immigrant. I ask this community, many of whose members are fortunate to already be homeowners, to say yes to modern, affordable homes that offer others the possibilities to also build a comfortable life in this high opportunity but very expensive part of New York City. We have here a project that can do just that without relying on municipal funding. We know from city planning data that New York is producing the fewest new housing units since 2015. Within that context, I just read last week in Forbes magazine that the financial district, even post-pandemic, still has the lowest rental vacancy rate in all of Manhattan. Jobs and people will continue to come to Lower Manhattan seeking the talent, cultural experiences like the Seaport Museum and Historic District, and amenities that only cities with the history and scale of New York can offer. And if you don't build new homes for them, they are just going to compete for the homes that are here now, potentially displacing families into areas further away where a walkable, car-free, sustainable lifestyle just isn't possible. This community's feedback has led to meaningful compromises in this proposal already. Let's choose to create 300 new homes and sustain the Seaport Museum's legacy over preserving a parking lot. Thank you and good night.
Thank you, Sheriff. Neil Flaherty, Ernest Tollerson, Brendan Sexton, then David Sheehan. Neil?
My name is Neil Flaherty, and I would like to thank you for the opportunity to speak in support of this plan that will enhance the district, provide jobs, increase available housing, and sorely needed financial support to the South Street Seaport Museum. I've been part of this community since I began working in the financial district in 1967 and started volunteering at the Seaport Museum in 1981. The museum is more than just about ships. It connects us to our city's history and the people who built it. The ships are an incredible asset for our city, but so are the rest of the collections, the maps and historic artifacts, not to mention the bygone skills and culture it helped keep alive. The museum is critical to the district. It attracts visitors from all over the world, and this tourism provides the lifeblood to many of the small businesses in the district. Last Saturday, my wife and I were aloft tarring the rigging on the ship Wavertree. When we came down on deck, we were stopped by two tourists from Argentina who had many questions about the ship and what we were doing as volunteers. Later, we saw these two visitors again having lunch when we went to Squire's Diner. This is one small example, but multiply that by the thousands of visitors the museum attracts every year, and you can see the importance of the museum to the district. The project is not a detriment to the district. Instead, it will provide a great boost. The existing parking lot has not provided these benefits in the past and certainly will not in the future. If I have to choose between a parking lot and no museum, or a multi-use building and a vibrant Seaport Museum that future generations can experience, I choose the latter every time. Hope is not a strategy. This project will provide the financial stability that the museum needs and deserves. I ask you to support it and the South Street Seaport Museum. Thank you.
Thanks, Neil. We're going to go to Ernest Tollerson, Brendan Sexton, then David Sheehan, then Maggie Flanagan. Ernest, are you able to unmute? Not sure Ernest hung on. All right. Brendan Sexton. Oh, yeah. Ernest, are you with us?
Great. Yes, I am.
Perfect. Thank you. Carry on. You have the floor.
Good evening. My name is Ernest Tollerson. I'm on the board of the South Street Seaport Museum. And my wife and I have lived in Lower Manhattan for 40 years. We enjoyed raising two kids here downtown. Clearly, the museum's landside and pierside assets are what makes the historic district come alive. As a museum trustee, very eager to rebuild the museum's sources of recurring operating revenue, I have an interest in the Community Benefits Fund that will be created if and when 250 Water Street is ever developed. Revenue from commercial activity within the South Street Seaport Historic District, and revenue from any new development within the historic district should always provide financial support for the museum. That principle captures the thinking and original intentions